welcome! Nice to see you. Of course, I forgot the one thing that I was supposed to do before the stream. Of course. Of course. I was going to charge my watch because it doesn't have any power left. It's just over there. So give me 2 seconds. You can still hear me, so yeah. I'm back. That didn't take a long time. Welcome! Okay, let's try this again. Hello! Welcome to this 9th and final round of the 8th Uppsala Young Champions 2021. This is my name and I'm very excited to be here today because we are together going to go through the games here in Uppsala. We have so many interesting matchups and everything coming up today. So of course it is a great pleasure. Now, let's take a look at the standings. Thank you, Jongjun. Let's take a look at the standings. We have them here. So we see that Vignir Vatnor and Aryan Gholami, they are together in first place at the moment with 6.5 out of 8. This is a huge amount of points. They have really been doing well, these two players, and we are so lucky to see them fighting against each other today on board 1, meaning that the winner of those two will be the winner of the tournament. If it is a draw, then it will all come down to tie breaks, and also how Hampus is doing, because he is in 3rd place with 6 points and a tiebreak of 33.5. As you can also see, I know it's a bit, we can try to zoom in a little bit here. Then we can just not see. There we go. Now you're not going to see me as well. Vignir, Aryan, Hampus. In 4th place, we have Jung Min Seo from Sweden. Then we have Hilmir, we have Yakum and Sim. In 7th place, Sim, who is the previous winner of the Uppsala Young Champions. So we have a lot of excitement round up for us today. I will be here with you the entire round. So, you know, we're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of exciting chess. And as always, if you have any questions, anything you want to know, if you have any insights on the position, then just write in the chat, because I will be more than happy to speak to you and to get the conversation going about chess, because of course chess is the greatest round. Screws confused me with writing rounds. Is the greatest game ever, and now I'm getting a chair spin. Okay, I think even though we're doing chairs, I can't speak today. Even though we're doing commentary, I think it's fine to get a little chair spin in, you know. If you get some hype going, if you need to get the energy up for the commentary. We need to start strong, you know. I also brought my coffee in the mug that my sister, she made me. Constantina, thank you so much. So let's do this. Let's do this thing. Also, I just want to say I'm so happy about my hair. I know it's a random thing to say, but I just wanted to point out. Now, see, I don't want to wreck anything, so let me just. Okay, this was not the most hype chair spin ever, but as you can see, I'm wearing green and pink today, and that's yeah. That's always a great mix in my opinion. Now, I have been talking a lot. Let's jump right into the chess, because very exciting stuff for us today. And I don't think we can get around taking... Oh no, I messed it up. There we go. I don't think we can get around taking the game between Vignir and Aryan here. Vignir is playing with the white pieces. We can see that he has more time than he started with, so we have to assume that he is well prepared for this game. I don't know how many of you remember, but in the 6th round that we were following together also, we saw Vignir throwing a winning position against Jung Min Seo. If he had won that, he could potentially, only potentially because we don't know how it would have evolved then, but he could potentially have been on 7 points. But today he is on 6.5 and so is Aryan, so this game is so important. It's the most important game for the tournament standings. So let's take it from the top here. 1 d4 by Vignir. d4, you know, I have to say, best by test. That's just how it is. And knight f6, c4, e6. So this opening can transpose into so many different things. There's knight c3, and then it can go to Nimzo Indian. It can go to a queen's gambit. Still options for declined or accepted. Then it can go to some Boko Indian if you play like this. It can go to some Rubinstein variations, or, well, this is the Queen's Indian, or then it can transpose into some Rubinstein variations. And you know, I don't have the alert box on for today, and I don't have the alert box on for today because this is official work, but just thank you so much, and Nonny Horsey, really appreciate it, of course. So if you don't see the alert box, I'm so sorry. This is how it is today. Thank you, Nonny Horsey. It is appreciated. Now, my nose is itchy as always. We know this. So just after 2 moves from each side, this opening can become so many different things. Besides from the things that I have mentioned, Vignir, he decided to go for something completely different. He went for 3g3, and now we're probably... I was going to say we can see a Catalan, but after c5, then it looks like we can go into some fianchetto Benoni after d5, but instead Vignir, he chose to play knight f3, and suddenly it's not a Benoni fianchetto, and this should just be some kind of Catalan with c5 and takes d4. So knight c6, knight c3. This looks like all quite normal stuff to me. But there are, now I just want to mention, there are some variations. Let's say black goes g6, g3 here. And then there are some things like these, where black plays with d6. There are some pawn sacrifice variations like this. And there's also knight c6 immediately, where there are also these. But so many different things. Just the difference between if the pawn is on e6 or on d6. You know, we could talk forever about openings, but let's just try to take a few more moves. Favorite name of a chess opening? There is the fried liver. I find that one quite a nice name. See, it's not an opening I would play myself, but fried liver and Halloween, it all sounds very nice, yeah. So knight c6, knight c3 was played, queen b6, bringing the queen out early. Oops, but also attacking here in the center. Knight b3 moved the knight. See, whenever I play... Thank you, Screws. Whenever I play these positions with white, I always tend to get in trouble because of this c4 pawn. When you're white, you really need to be careful of this pawn. Miscalculated. You need to be careful about this pawn because it can become weak, but a normal maneuver for white in these kind of positions is to bring the knight to d2 to protect here, and then you're going to play b3. Because otherwise you need some other way of getting the bishop on c1 out. But once again, there is also the difference of where these two center pawns are placed, because if they were on e7 and d6 instead, then this bishop would be able to get out much better to attack the pawn. So here it's not as big of an issue as it is in some other lines. Knight e5, attack the pawn immediately, and e4, protecting the pawn with the bishop, but also now saying I might have a bit of trouble developing this bishop now, as I then would drop the pawn. So Wigner still needs to find a way to protect this one. Bishop b4 and queen e2. Once again, we're reaching a very interesting, very interesting point of the opening, because around this time, Arjen, he has to take some serious he has to take some serious concessions in this position, because either he can take this knight on c3 to double white's pawns here, and then he would play against these two pawns, but he is also giving away his bishop pair, or he can play like he does with d6. I'm not even sure d6 is necessary now, but you could imagine that, let's say he castled, he might have been a bit not worried. No, wait, you start with bishop e3 here, because if you go f4 first, then knight g4, and now white might actually be in trouble. So instead, bishop e3 and f4 could come. So what he does with d6 here is that he's getting this bishop, getting to develop this bishop in a nice way. It's tough to develop it with b6 as the queen is standing there. And he's also making a potential escape route for the knight on e5, just later in the game. Also, it seems to be difficult getting the pawn all the way to d5, so it probably has to go to d6 at some other point. Now, Wigner, he did play f4, and my guess is the reason Arjen didn't go knight g4 is because it can just... That was aggressive. That was my watch. Okay. The reason he didn't go knight g4 immediately is because it can simply be kicked away with h3, where the knight would have to go to h6, and as we know, a knight on the rim is dim. So we might not want it here, whereas the development of white would be very natural and very easy. So instead, the knight went back to c6. Not to d7, because he doesn't want to block the bishop, and he also wants to look more into the center of the board. After bishop e3 attacking the queen had to drop back, and now bishop g2. So Wigner, a lot of time on the clock, Arjen thinking in this position. To me, Wigner seems very well prepared. Like, he has for sure had this on his board, either in chess base or on a real board, either before this game, or he has studied this variation some time ago. He has a lot of space here in the center. His pawns, they are far ahead, but what Arjen has in this position is that he has a bit more stability, and his pieces are quite flexible, though he hasn't castled yet, but he has a lot of options. My guess would be that he will eventually take this one, where the pawn will have to take back, and then he will try to see if he can exploit some of this here on the c file. And you have to be careful about for how long you wait with taking the knight on c3, because let's say you castle and white is allowed to go rook c1, then probably white is already threatening to play a3, and then let's say bishop d7, and after a3, this bishop is forced to go somewhere where you lose the bishop pair. Anani Horsey, actually not tomorrow, but I hope that you have a great day nevertheless. I'm going to work tomorrow. So now this bishop has to drop somewhere where black will inevitably lose the bishop pair, and this is not something that you would like, because this position is very open, and these bishops, they're just cutting down the board. I see that Aryan, he did something completely else than I was talking about. He went for e5. This is a major, major, major concession in the center. But I guess the reason that it's justified is the fact that this knight on c3 is pinned. If this knight on c3 wasn't pinned, if the knight on c3 wasn't pinned, then it would have such an amazing square here on d4, and my guess would be that black would already be in trouble. But because black can take this knight, get rid of the option for this knight to jump into d5, then e5 can be justified. It almost reminds us of some kind of Najdorf positions with these pawns on d6 and e5. This could actually very, very well, let me just go all the way back here, be some kind of ooh, that pawn went far ahead. Be some kind of g3 Najdorf if we just take some of the moves here, and with g3, e5, the knight going back here. Though this bishop is inside the pawn chain, but just to illustrate something something like this. Okay, now the bishop can come out to e3 quite easily. So let's say the queen goes here to c7, castles, bishop e7, queen e2, castles, and f4. And now we see that the two major differences from this position and the other one we had is the bishop on e7 and the pawn on c2, where if we go ahead to the current position, you see that not much has changed. None of them have castled yet, but also this bishop b4 pin on the knight so that it can't go into d4. Does commenting this event instead of playing it make me feel like a grown-up? I'm actually still the age where I would be able to play the tournament, and to say that I was actually also invited to the tournament, but I had to decline my invitation because of university, which is of course a little bit sad, but then I was very happy that they asked me to do some commentary instead, because then it does feel like you are kind of a part of it, yeah? So Vignir is now for the first time in the game thinking. He is not blitzing out his moves, so he's probably been surprised by this move e5. Now this surprise can actually mean two things. Well, there are a few options. Firstly, Vignir could just be trying to recall his preparation. Secondly, he could just not be present at the board. Thirdly, this was not in his preparation. So let's assume that Vignir is in preparation up until this point, and then Aryan played e5 and Vignir is thinking. So firstly, it could mean that Vignir's preparation stopped after bishop g2, that he didn't have any more moves. Secondly, it can also mean that either he just didn't look at enough moves. Maybe he looked at bishop takes c3, he looked at castles, he maybe looked at bishop d7, b6. He could have looked at a few different things and didn't look at this move e5 for a few reasons. Maybe there were just so many other moves to investigate, he could have forgotten his prep, or the engine could simply just think that this is not a good move, in which case it wouldn't have showed up when he was sitting with his engine. And then he's trying to find out, okay, why didn't this move show up when I was doing my preparation? Why might the engine think that this is a bad move? Now, of course, I am not looking with the engine right now, so I don't have some kind of clear-cut, answer to what the engine thinks or what the correct evaluation of this position is. But it's just to say there are many options for what might be going on psychologically in this game right now. I really enjoy oh, that's a great coffee. Though I have to cough, sorry. I'm back. Okay. So, oh yeah, if you want to check out the standings, actually that was a great idea, Botis. Here are the games if you want to try to go and follow them yourself. And if you want to check out the standings, then we have them here. Great. Now, let's try to look at another game, because Vignir, he is thinking here. I think that we should jump straight to the second board. And this board is actually also very important for our tournament standings, because Vignir is on 5.5, Hampus is on 6. If Vignir, sorry, did I say? Hilmir is on 5.5, Hampus is on 6. And if the game between Vignir and Arjen is a draw, then Hampus, he has the chance to catch up with those two. Otherwise, he could also be looking at a second place if he wins this game. Of course, Hilmir, he will try his best to make sure that this doesn't happen. Now, this looks like a very complicated position, so I think that we should take it from the start. I have a hiccup coming. There we go. I just hit my hiccup in drinking my coffee. That is great. Okay, now let's look at this game. We actually have the first two moves for each side here are the same ones as in the other games we're looking at, so I'm not gonna go into depth with the opening here, though. Knight f3, before we saw Vignir playing g3. Knight f3 is something completely different, and also after d5, bishop g5, we see this is not close to what we were looking at before, where Vignir, he played with g3. Now, this could transpose to some kind of Queen's Gambit decline, but if we take a few more moves, we actually see that this is completely different. I am not too sure of what this opening is actually called, but we can see that there are a lot of different stuff, a lot of different things happening here. So the white bishop went out to g5 very early, so after bishop b4 check, the knight had to go in between here on d2. Yeah, Hakdash, I can see that on Lichess as well. But after d takes c4, this isn't Queen's Gambit declined. It's actually accepted, but it's not really a Queen's Gambit accepted here. And the real Vienna has some other pawn sacrifices, and I don't believe it's the Ragozin either. The Ragozin comes like this, I believe, in the Nimzo Indian, or this bishop is somewhere else. There are also some bishop g5 moves and different things, also stuff like this might actually be what I'm thinking about. This might be yeah, this is the Ragozin, not with the pawn on e3, but with the knight on f3 instead. But what we see here is quite different. It should have some name that I am not too sure of. D takes c4. Black is getting a pawn. We see that there is a pin on the knight, so white can't really recapture no matter how much you want it to. From this point on, delayed accepted. Yeah, maybe. Now Hampus still with a lot of time on the clock. Hilmir also fairly much. No, that's not what you say. Hilmir also has quite a bit of time on the clock, so I would assume that Hilmir, he was still in prep here, but maybe he was just taking some more time. You know, people, they don't always just blitz out their prep. Sometimes they need to remember, and sometimes it's just good to take a breather before you make your move. Because if you're not really into the position, if you're just sitting and blitzing, then it can actually mess your brain up quite a bit when your preparation then stops, or when you're met with a move that you didn't expect. Then because you've been playing so fast and your brain is in this fast mode, so taking these breaths can also be very important, even though you know what moves you're going to make. This is something I have done many times before, where I've taken several minutes sometimes when I've known exactly what I was going to play, the next move and the next move and the next move. So yeah, it can sometimes be a very good idea just to look a bit at the position with your own eyes, instead of just with the eyes that you were using when you were going through it with the computer. So there's a question: do you ever take time with your prep to pretend you're out of book and trick your opponent? So this is of course a very personal question. Not that it's personal, but it's different from person to person. Now, for me personally, as I said, I will sometimes be thinking, even though I know what I want to play, if I'm properly, like if I'm really well prepared, sometimes I just get so excited and I just want to blitz out everything. And it's exactly in those moments where I take a bit of extra time to just make sure that I don't mess anything up along the way, or to just try to look at the position with my own eyes. And I know that many players, they do this as well. If I have ever been trying to trick my opponent, maybe, but the problem with doing that is also you never know how much time you should take to trick your opponent, because if you suddenly take 10 minutes on a move that you know you're going to make, it might not be the greatest trap ever if your opponent then suddenly plays something else. So it's a good question always. E3 attacks the pawn with the bishop, so Hilmir, he played b5, just protecting the pawn. A3 attacking the bishop, which now took the knight. He could also have considered going back with the bishop. I guess that white would have played something like a4 to try to undermine these pawns. Now it's a bit weird because the bishop made 2 moves going to b4 and back, but this pawn here on a4 also made 2 moves going to a4 instead of 1. So I don't know if white could try to exploit this in some better way. Maybe some knight e5, looking for a queen f3, attacking down here. Probably black would play bishop b7. But yeah, he took instead, and the knight took back. So now he's once again maybe looking at this knight, at this queen to f3, or maybe he's looking at knight e4. Maybe he could be looking at d4 also, but to be completely honest, I'm not sure what the point of taking with the knight actually is. Though we can see that still Hampus did not spend a lot of time up to this point, so it does mean that he's in prep here. Now I still don't know what the problems here could be. Maybe after bishop b7 he didn't like the option of getting some double pawns, and he wants to attack these pawns as quickly as he can because he is still a pawn down. Now bishop b7 came and b3 was played. Now we might see the difference. If you take with the queen here, bishop b7 and b3, then you're actually not protecting the b3 pawn. Though this is also an option. But this knight takes, then you would also be able to take back with the knight and go to c5 or a5. So in this position, Hilmir, he played c5 immediately. If he had taken this one, then he probably wouldn't be allowed to play c5 ever, challenging the center. And then these pawns, well, there's also this one first. Just let's imagine this pawn is not hanging, this pawn is on a6 or something. Then these dark squares, they would be very weak and you'd never really be allowed to play c5. You'd get a backwards pawn on c7. So he played c5 immediately just to in the future try to avoid any of these problems ever. D takes c5. Now the pawn was hanging, but here white has a big choice to make because it's equal in pawns now for some very, very weird reason. But white can choose to protect their own pawn with b4. Now protecting here... what? Screws made a Duolingo comment. And it's not even paid promotion? What's going on? Duolingo? Can you send me some commission over here immediately, please? Okay. So b4 would protect the pawn on c5, though we see quite a funny pawn structure. White has these three, and black is probably going to get these three, or try to attack immediately with some a5. Then you'd probably prefer the knight on c6 as to attack on b4. But very, very confusing stuff. Instead, he took on c4, which was the other option, and after knight takes c5, once again, they are equal in material. White or Hampus, he could have taken this pawn, but knight d3, I think, could be a problem here, where now black can castle, and if you go queen e2, black will always have this option, and then retreating with the bishop, maybe putting some quick pressure on these pawns with a6 or king e7 and rook d8. You don't even have to trade queens here, and the knight is also well placed on c5, so you'd have some other options. Maybe you could go queen a5, or you could simply just castle. Many options here, and instead Hampus, he went for bishop e2, which is certainly also a very, very sharp move. Now this one is hanging, but how much is it hanging? And why do we not take it? Is my big question. Why do we not take it? Is it possible to know the kind of endgame they will be facing? I wouldn't say so. Not yet. It's way too early. Way too many pieces on the board. There are a lot of options in this position. So it's very, very tough to say what kind of endgame they will be facing, even if they will be facing an endgame. This is also tough to know. So yeah, now I'm still not sure. So probably the rook has to go to g1. You don't really want any of this bishop f3 business, because I think then knight d3 would be quite a big issue. So rook g1, the bishop drops back. Where does the bishop drop back to? Maybe here. Is his plan to take? Now the king is just so weak. Well, the king might not be weak, but it can never castle. Not sure I want to castle with this king either. But I'm such a greedy person. I'm such a greedy person. Really just thinking about why we cannot take this pawn. Okay, what are our other alternatives? We need more candidate moves in this position. Now let's imagine that we take this pawn. Try to get rid of some of the problems or difficulties that we could be facing. My guess is that knight takes back. If we trade queens, maybe this knight has a strong future on d6. I'd suppose some knight e4. And if f3, oh, these are long variations. Long variation, wrong variation. This does seem, oh goodness. But then this, oh, this is shaky. No, but this one is protected. Okay, Long variation, wrong variation. But still, really, really complicated. I'm not sure I'd like this for black. It seems like white's pieces are getting very active, though this is still an option. So does white even have to take it back? Maybe castle now? And if castles, then we could take it. Though that does also seem like quite an equal-ish. I'm not going to say equal because white does have the bishop pair here. So equal-ish position. So bishop e2. Do you think that Hilmir, he dares to take the pawn on g2? I'd be a bit scared, and I'd also love to see how much time they have, but I can't see this at the moment. Okay, probably this for... Now the question is also, is Hampus satisfied with the draw? And is Hilmir the one who has to push for a win? Because Hilmir, he is half a point behind. So if he wants a third place, this is a must-win game if he wants third. If he's satisfied with fourth or fifth, all depending on his tie breaks, and people could catch up with him. People on the same points as him could win their games. So maybe it's very likely that it's Hilmir here who has to play for the win. Where's this tournament? This tournament is being played in Sweden, in Uppsala, which is a city in Sweden. Okay, so I'm not sure that Hampus is satisfied with the draw, but he also knows that Hilmir is the one who has to be pushing here. Now, yeah, it's quite funny. I thought of this yesterday. A Danish girl playing for a Norwegian chess club doing commentary on a tournament in Sweden. Let's go. So, yeah, I have another hiccup coming. Give me a second. Didn't quite manage to to hide that one when drinking my coffee, but okay. It's all Scandinavian though. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Hilmir is thinking here. Now, did you miss anything? Yeah, you missed everything, Screws. Everything. Now let's try to go to this next game between Jungmin Seo and Victoria Radeva, who is the highest rated girl of the tournament, WGM from Bulgaria. And she's here playing with the black pieces. If we try to bring up the standings to see where she is right now, then here we can see that she's currently in 8th place with 5 points. There are a lot of people with 5 points though. Number 6, 7, 8, and 9, they all have 5 points, to me it seems. So they are hoping to get some good tie breaks. They all want to win this game, of course. But Victoria, she's the one playing against Jungmin who has half a point more, so she of course also wants to overtake him. Never an easy task. Also, when she's here playing with the black pieces, we're seeing a lot of d4 openings here today, but for once we aren't seeing any knight f6. We're seeing c4, d5, c4, e6, and now we're seeing knight f6 again. So this has transposed to something which might as well come from this opening where white goes d5. This is the same. These are the same moves. So knight c3, c6, e3, we are seeing some semi-Slav here. Now the semi-Slav with e3. You can't see the board. Oh, sorry. Thank you going back to the board. Let's take it from the top. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6. So as I was trying to say when you couldn't see the board, is that this might as well have come from knight f6, c4, c4, e6, as we've looked at a lot of times today with knight f3 and d5. And now we have a direct transposition into what happened in the game, where white played knight c3, c6, a semi-Slav here, and e3. Now e3 is actually a very interesting variation against a semi-Slav. If you want to transpose to some kind of queen's gambit, then you can take on d5. Now it can go into an exchange Slav, but also after e takes d5, bishop g5. This is known to be a bit of a better semi-Slav or variation of the Queen's Gambit declined because of this early knight f3, where usually white would have a move here with the knight on g1, and then you'd play some e3, or you'd basically try to stop this bishop from developing to f5. Yeah, it is Carlsbad, but it's a little bit of an improved Carlsbad for black because of this knight on f3. If we try to compare it with these variations. Now here you can't develop the bishop because there are some of these things. So people, they go c6, protect this pawn to try to get this bishop out. But after e3, you can't really go to g4. And if you go to f5, there are variations with queen f3, bishop g6, takes. And I believe they go f4 or knight e2 here. But people, they don't really play this bishop f5 variation much because it's a bit of a struggle variation for... Though black does get the bishop pair in these variations, but they play it sometimes on the highest level, but people, they sometimes prefer to go bishop e7 and then bishop d3, and we're in a normal Carlsbad. But if we compare it to here, if we compare it to here with this one, where the knight is already on f3, then black actually does have the chance to go bishop f5. Probably doesn't even have to do it immediately, bishop e7, e3, bishop f5. And now black gets to trade this very nice dark squared bishop. What white gets is an early b4 instead. Now, that was a lot of opening theory very quickly explained, also happening very quickly. Just trying to share a bit of the knowledge I have on this opening. None of this happened, of course. So we had the e3 semi-Slav. That was probably a bit unnecessary because it didn't happen, but okay, now you know. Now knight bd7, queen c2, bishop d6, e4. Oof. Okay, so I think there's a variation with... I need to check. Yeah, g4 is a move here. So once again, if I have to share some of my incredible opening knowledge, of course, I can see here e4 hasn't been played much. So it's understandable if Victoria, she got surprised in this position. But seeing on the time that she spent, my guess is that she did not get surprised. The main move in this position is bishop d3, just trying to develop the bishop, but g4 is actually a very, very tricky move, and one that you probably have to know if you play the semi-Slav. I can say that I've looked a bit at it myself, and it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun, this g4 variation. But instead, Jungmin went for e4, opening up for this bishop immediately, trying to get a little trick in here with e5, but d takes e4, knight e4, knight e4, queen e4, knight, bishop b4 check. Okay, so what we are seeing here, this pawn structure is called... It's some kind of... it's a pawn structure that arises often from the Caro-Kann or from the French. Actually, if any one of you know, I did notice that WIM Jessie February, she got this exact pawn structure in her game in the Women's Grand Swiss today, where she was playing the French with d takes e4, the Rubinstein variation. And this pawn structure is also a very, very common one. It's a very strategic pawn structure, so if you know this well with white, or if you know this well with black, compared to if your opponent doesn't, you can outplay your opponent for sure, but it is known to be a little bit better for white. Though the good thing about black in this exact position is that she's traded a knight. And when you get to trade pieces in this pawn structure, you're usually very happy, because you're trying to argue that these pawns in the center, they are quite far ahead, and what you want to do is that you want to get a break. You want to get a break in with c5 or e5. And this is... And you want to trade pieces. The reason you want to trade pieces is because white has more space. And when white has more space, or when someone has more space, they prefer to keep the pieces on the board, because then they can try to push their opponent back, or they can use the pieces for an attack. So therefore also this bishop d4, and now forcing another exchange. This is, I'd say this is nice for black. I can understand if this is forced, which I don't quite think it is after e4, then I can understand why people, they would want to refrain from this e4 here so early in the opening, because this seems like a nice variation. White did have the option to go e4, but then you have to calculate knight f6, attacking the queen and the pawn. Now, the queen would have to stay here somewhere on the e file to make sure that black wouldn't be able to take this pawn. You need to keep the pin. But probably, let's say here, attacking this pawn, probably this isn't much for white. I could imagine that firstly, black can just castle. If you take, then I think white is actually getting into trouble now. So d5 in this position might be a bit of a stretch. Instead, Min also chose to take queen c7. No need to take the pawn back just yet. Though what happens if b4? Oh, not b6. Sorry, not b6. Okay, first I want to ask, what's the problem with this? Let's say the queen goes to e3. And the queen here goes to c7. Now you're protecting, and white will develop, black will develop, white will develop, black will develop. Equal-ish. But instead she chose to go queen c7, and no, maybe b4 is just too much because of a5, and after a3, then we can see here that white is getting into trouble. You can't take back because the rook on a1 is hanging. So black would be undermining these pawns, and if b5 comes, then white has gone too far with these pawns. The dark squares, they are getting a bit much here, and this is probably not advisable. So therefore he didn't go b4. Hello, Liv Fong, nice to see you, and yes, congrats on the 1 year of streaming. Okay, have a great lesson. I haven't checked it out actually. 3 awards, sounds great. So we are also, if you are new here, we are doing commentary of I never know which direction to point, of this 8th Uppsala Young Champions 2021. Sorry. This tournament is being played in Uppsala in Sweden. This is the 9th and final round. We have a lot of action and excitement going on the boards. So yeah, very, very great. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, anything you want to know, if you have some insights on the positions, some variation that you want us to check out, then just let me know. I'd be very, very happy to hear it all, starting the conversation and talking about chess instead of me just having a monologue. Then let's try with a bit of a dialogue here. So yeah, bishop e2. Now my nose is still itchy. Bishop e2, preparing to castle, and then she decided to take the pawn. Now she didn't want to wait anymore. Queen e3, castles. Jungmin still hasn't castled yet. Then b4 landed on the board, attacking the knight here, getting some more space on the queen side, but you have to be careful that you're not pushing your pawns so far ahead that they end up becoming weaknesses. The knight went back to d7. It could look at this f6 square, short castles, and she did decide to attack these pawns immediately. Now we do see the difference between this and the b4 I was talking about before, where the rook on a1 wasn't protected, but in this case it is. So here, if black takes, white can safely take back, having no worries, as you can take back with the rook on a1, at the same time gaining the full a file here. Instead, she also didn't take the pawn on b4. She the b4 from before, yeah, true, that was on purpose. Instead, she decided to keep the tension, and keeping the tension is very, very important in chess sometimes. Very important in chess sometimes. You need to know how to keep the tension if you want to become good at chess, because it's not just always that trading is good. For example, we see here that if she had taken, this would probably have given white an edge because of this open file, this bad bishop on b7. But instead, she's keeping her options open, and she's saying that you don't really want to take this pawn on a5 anyway, because after rook takes, my rook gets into play along this 5th rank in one move, and now these split pawns aren't good for white. My mom is calling me. Am I surprised? No. Because she has a tendency of knowing when I stream and then deciding to call at those points. Okay. But she's keeping the tension here. She's getting ready to develop her bishop. The knight went to b3. So now Jungmin could be looking at taking this pawn. But still, Victoria, she went bishop b7, and we see he would have the option of getting a passed, it's not called a free. In Danish it's called a free. But a passed pawn here on c4. Though the problem of doing this for white is, once again, you get the split pawns, and if you can't really use this pawn as a strength, then it could also become a weakness, because black can try to pile up against the pawn or block it on the dark squares here. So also Jungmin decided to go knight d4, heading for this b5 square, which looks like a very juicy square indeed. One of the problems of pushing these pawns on the queen side is that they can't go back ever, so you could come into a little bit of trouble here. Now after this knight d4, my mom, she sent me a text. I hope it's nothing important. She's saying, call me. I'll say, working. So knight d4. And Victoria, she has 57 minutes left. This is by no means any time trouble after 19 moves. So it seems like she can just keep on playing. Playing like normal as she has up until this point. As for the evaluation of the position, no, I did not forget my sister's birthday. As for the evaluation of the position, it seems to be a bit more comfortable for white in this position, as white is the one to have more space, though some pieces have been traded. You need to look a bit out for this C pawn, but so far it's not a weakness at all, and black can really go bishop a6, I believe. White can just bring the rook, still looking at knight b5 here, and you'd even have the option. Well, you're never going to play b5 because this c5 square is just getting too weak, and this c4 pawn will be left forever backward. But yeah, so she has to find a good reply to this. I don't know if a move like queen e5 in this position is possible, with the point takes, and now we're looking at this. We have a nice knight in the center, though you have to look a bit out for moves like f4 if this isn't overextending anyway. You need to remove the e from call screws, but otherwise correct. Okay, so we have been looking in quite a bit of depth at these 3 top boards actually. Now, if there are anyone in the audience who has a game that they specifically want to look at, then please let me know, then we can take that game for sure. Otherwise, I will pick some, and we can also go back to the first board to see if there has been any developments there. I don't expect that I will get a reply real quickly. Harry's game. Sorry, screws. Now, I also wanted to check Jonas' game, and I haven't done this since commentary started. So, you know, I'm gonna do that. But if we go back to the first board here, oh my goodness. If we go back to the first board here, then we see that some developments have been made. After bishop g2, e5, this was where we last left it. And I was speaking about if black doesn't take this knight here on c3, then white will have the option of protecting it with rook c1, not getting these double pawns as we were talking about. And he did play this rook c1, though as we were also talking about, this knight wants to jump into d5 and it's still not possible because of this pin right here. But now e takes f4, g takes f4. This pawn structure is quite unusual. I haven't seen much of these pawn structures. When they arise, there's especially, well, in the Najdorf, I know the pawn is usually on c2, and you more see a pawn, a piece take back on f4. So this is a bit unusual. We have three pawns here, c4, e4, f4, and then this very weird pawn on d6. I have no clue whatsoever what this position is. Now castles, and he finally decided to take on c3, because now that white has castled, then if you don't take on c3, you make a developing move like bishop e6. Finally, white will have the option of putting this knight in on d5 as we were talking about, because the king is no longer on e1, so the knight is free to move. So he was actually kind of forced to play this bishop takes c3, otherwise he would probably get into huge trouble. Rook takes c3, of course you do not want these double pawns here on the c file, also blocking the rook. So instead rook takes c3, rook e8, trying to put some pressure on the center. As I've been saying, white has some more space, But you have to be careful that these pawns, they don't turn into weaknesses. Queen d3 protected the pawn on e4, knight b4 attacking the queen, and queen b1 still keeping an eye on this pawn here on e4. Now some more pressure was applied. Knight d2, I was talking about this maneuver earlier. We see the knight started on g1, went to f3, d4, b3, d2. From d2 where it protects both c4 and e4. Knight g4, we see that black keeps making threats to the white position. This knight to b4 got there attacking the queen, the rook got here attacking the pawn, the queen got here attacking the pawn, this knight goes to g4 attacking the bishop. So white has to keep on just replying to these threats, and once again knight c6 was attacking this bishop on d4. So the very nice bishop pair that white once had after queen d3 could now very, very well disappear. I don't even think black has to take this one immediately, because it doesn't have anywhere to go where it can't be captured by a knight. It can both be captured on e3, it can be captured on f2. So black could also make a developing move in this position. But we see here now some of these dark squares, they are getting a bit more weak. This pawn's still backward, but you have to look out for these pawns. It's a very, very tense position. It could go wrong for both sides very quickly, I believe. And once again, as for an objective evaluation, this is so difficult for me to say. There might be some concrete reason or concrete variation that just makes one of the sides have a much better position. For example, maybe white has the option of getting a quick e5 in, opening for the bishop, or f5, f6. The rook can go to g3, attacking on g7. So a lot of options for both white and black here. Also, Aryan, he did not take on d4. He did go bishop d7, saying, I don't need to take this bishop right away. But I believe that he will take it at some point, because if he doesn't take it, then the white bishop can be really strong on the dark squares. It also makes sense, for example, from some of these options that we were looking at before. You don't really want to allow this rook to get some kind of easy development, which you would if you took the bishop on d4 immediately, but after bishop d7, then these pieces, they're still a bit clumsy in the center, and you need to find some kind of way to free yourself. If you go h3, then my guess is that black will take this bishop on d4, because knight f6 could be met by bishop f2, which could be a bit annoying for black. But h3 also seems like a weakening move. Then you never have the option to go rook h3 if that is something you want to. In general, when we move pawns, we lose a bit of flexibility in the position. So yeah, bishop d7, and Vignir is thinking here. We can see that the two players, they have approximately the same time on the clock. My face is so itchy, I'm so sorry. Always happens when I stream. Don't know why. My coffee is still great though. Yeah, this stream is all about Sweden. Maybe I should have worn some Offer Spill merch just to establish dominance, but who knows. Once again, face is itchy. I think it's because of my hair, just getting in my face all the time. Okay, I read that someone said board 18 could be getting interesting, so let's go right over there. So for the first three boards, we did see that d4 was best by test. But on this board, we see one e4 now. This is an opening that I do not know as much about as I do with the d4 openings. Actually, my knowledge in these positions is limited to the openings that I play myself. And especially e4, e5, I cannot say too much about, but I do know that this is the Spanish. So bishop a4, this is all very, very standard stuff. If knight f6 had been played immediately, then we could have seen a Berlin after castles. Yeah, true. But no Berlin here, a6, bishop f4. This is one of the most played lines in the world at all. And I have a hiccup coming. I'm so sorry. I have to call it the Rui Lopez because it sounds fancier. Nothing to do. Happens when I stream. Just nothing to do. Absolutely nothing. Yeah, Spanish or Rui Lopez. So bishop a4, knight f6, d3. All of this is heavy theory. I believe that you black played h6 here, but I can believe that you can even go d5. I should be very... Oops, that's d6. D6 you can probably also play. And then it can turn into some kind of prayer. Oh, I should be careful about what I'm saying. Let's skip a few moves ahead. Bishop a7, just preparing for any d4 in the future. Knight f1, trying to reroute this knight either to g3 or to e3. I think the most common way is to go to e3 because you want this knight to go to f5, but I can see that after a5, a4, a5 though. That's not very common, I think. Usually white is the one who plays a4 against these pawns. And now white also did go a4 and then b4. Do I play the Danish team championships? Yes, I do. Now, 93, d6, and goodness, g4 was played. Okay, so I said that the most common way was probably to... Screws, you're very funny. But thank you so much, Screws. I appreciate it. Thank you. Now, as I said before, I do not have my alert box on, but Screws already knows that. So yeah, thank you. I did say that the knight going to g3 was the most common way, but here Julia with the white pieces, she had a completely different idea because she went for knight e3 and g4. She's looking for g5 or she's looking for knight f5. This game has turned incredibly sharp after this g4 move. Knight e7 was played, probably trying to anticipate some knight f5 or getting Kim trying to get his own knight to f4, which has been weakened a bit more after g4. Thank you for what, Scrooge? You know that I can see your email, and you know that I can see when it's you who donates, yeah? So, knight e7. A few different ideas. I like this move. Also, maybe looking for an expansion in the center with either c6 and d5. Should be careful about c5, because if you play c5, you're really gonna shut down this bishop on a7. But I like knight e7, keeping some flexibility. g5 was played. Oh my goodness. hg5, knight g5, and knight g6. Okay. So what has white gotten in this position and what has black got? Now we see, oops, this bishop is looking at f7, this knight is looking at f7. My face is itchy. Is the black king weak? To me, this stuff always looks incredibly dangerous. Ooh, this is tough to evaluate though. Resting edge face, yeah. This is tough to evaluate. Because it very much depends on time. Is white quick enough? White has a fair amount of pieces into the attack. The bishop, the knight, this knight, the queen can maybe join quickly with the pawn and the rook joining at once. It's just this king is still in the center, this rook isn't really playing. But how is black supposed to get counterplay in this position? Now, okay, firstly, white is the one to move. I could imagine a move like queen f3, but that might also be met by knight f4, where you need to find something to do about this d3 pawn because the queen is no longer protecting. Then if knight f5, oh, you also have to look out now that this knight isn't protected anymore. Maybe h4 immediately, weakening this square a little bit. I don't know if black would be able to take on e3, put a piece on g4, but f3. So I don't think you want to give the bishop pair away here with bishop takes e3. The problem is just that if you don't do it, you're going to have a bishop that doesn't really do much on a7 and this knight, which can quickly join the attack. It's just if you do take, then this bishop joins the attack much more easily. Many considerations to be made for both players. We do see that white has spent a lot of time in this position. 35 minutes already. 35 minutes left after 15 moves already. I think this could induce some serious time trouble for white, especially, let me just tell you the time control, because the time control is 1 hour and 30 minutes plus 30 seconds per move and nothing else. So if white first goes down on time, this can very quickly turn into something that you don't want it to be, especially since white is the one who has to attack, and if you are attacking, you probably need to calculate a lot and you need to calculate precisely, because otherwise it can just go south. And if you don't attack, if you try to just play some moves quickly, improve your position a little bit, if you try to play it positionally, then you should also be careful that your position doesn't get weak because you've pushed your pawns so far. So it's so I'd say this could get quite difficult for white if she doesn't find some way to play some quick moves while developing an attack, for example with h4 in this position. So yeah, once again, I do not know what the computer evaluation is. I don't know what elo they have, but I can check. White has almost 1700 while black is 1950 elo. This we can probably also see a little bit on the time spent. White has spent quite a bit more time than black in this position. Now we see some results. We see that on board 17, Anton Frank lost to Victor Muntian. And I think I played Victor last year in this tournament also. I was playing with the black pieces as far as I remember. But in this position, Victor did win. We can just take a look. Okay, the Chubava London from Anson here, and Victor decided to go bishop g7, allowing e4 here. Now, h5 was also played. This is probably what he wanted to avoid. So h5, but this looks like quite a bit. I'm not the biggest fan of this move, pushing the pawn, because now you're also, sometimes you're very weak to h3. Oops, sorry. My ears are out of control. There we go. Sorry. Now you can be weak to some quick h3, g4, and still, let's say white plays a move like knight f3, then castles, and you've actually not come away. You've actually not come away from this bishop h6. 2 seconds. Okay, at the same time you're still getting met by bishop h6. I believe it's a bit more common to play moves like h6 in this position, but you still can castle. h5 was played, castles, knight c6, okay. King b1, bishop d7. White has a lot of space in the center that black isn't really trying to attack just yet. Black is just developing, but we see black does not have a lot of space in this position. And now h3 trying to play this g4 move, and e5 landing on the board, not even getting the chance to play e5. There we go. Not even getting the chance to play e5 in this position, as white was the one to do it first. Knight h7, e6, my goodness. Now if bishop takes e6, d5 on the board, and you can't even save yourself like this because the rook is still protecting the pawn. So instead black had to play f takes e6. Now these pawns are very, very weak. Bishop d3 attacking the pawn. I think white has played a tremendous game thus far. And white, this is a great position for white. Really, really good. Black was forced to play e5. And now white went all in with bishop takes g6. It's actually not all in because takes, then the bishop on d7 is hanging. Oh my goodness. Now, though, white is trading some pieces instead of trying to keep the attack going here. So perhaps white could just have played bishop h6 here. And now, so if black plays like this, I think this is just good night. Black is getting mated here. The extra pawn for black does not matter at all in this position. So black has to play something different, probably protect this pawn here on g6. Either with knight f8, though then you are allowing some kind of g4 or the knight coming to g5 at some point into the position, maybe knight e4 even. So you could also play bishop f5, but then you'd have to get ready for these pawns. Though, you can't take on d2 because takes d2, there's bishop e6, and this would win a piece because after the king moves, you can take with on g7 with a check. Also it takes back and rook takes d2. So instead, you'd have to take back, and now queen g5 is hanging the queen. So instead, queen e3 could attack the queen, look at some knight g5 or take g7. This would be a very, very good position for white. Though what he did, not bad at all. It was just if you wanted to keep the queens on the board, so that you could attack the black king more. How am I Danish but have a Norwegian accent? People, they say quite a few things about my accent. I can't say what it is myself. I've been told everything. I think I've literally been told everything about my accent. Everything from Russian to Irish. And no, I'm not contractually obliged to stream with a Norwegian accent. No, I don't think my accent is Norwegian. Welsh? But Norwegians, they speak quite differently. Okay, I mean, if I compare it to when a Norwegian speaks Norwegian, then it's very different. Very, very different. But anyway, Russia to Ireland, isn't that a big part of the world? Well, how does Faroese accent sound? Oh, I don't even know. Okay, but back to the chess. Enough about my accent. Now rook takes d7. Anton here is attacking the pawn on c7, attacking the pawn on h5, attacking the rook on e8. So Victor decided to protect the rook by moving it and also protecting this pawn. Now knight d5, and I can see here that the computer is actually saying that this is a big mistake, and it's very sad because it's because of knight f8 trapping the rook. But I need to find out. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Attacking the rook and the bishop. I didn't even see that the bishop was hanging also. Oh, so knight f8 just trapping the rook. That was so sad because Anton's been playing such a great game up until this point. Do not take the pawn. We have some of the same problems here, but maybe taking this one first and then going knight d5, because then the rook isn't getting trapped, could have been an option. And the only way to protect this pawn is probably to go bishop f6. So Scrooge, you can give yourself the channel points back because I'm probably not going to speak Danish. Sorry. Now knight d5. That was met by this bishop f8, and it's so sad because I really think that white had played such a brilliant game up until this point. Now e6, and after knight takes c7, takes here on f5, rook takes g7. After all these trades, we see that black did end a piece up. Probably the rest of the game isn't worth seeing. Now I see that there is a way white could have tried to keep on fighting with rook takes here and take, knight takes f4. Okay, but still, this is only 2 pawns for the piece. This is hardly fighting here. That was so sad because Anton played a great game, but Victor finding the tricks, maintaining his position, and in the end being the person to come out on top. We also do have a draw between 2 of the players here, FM Gustav Törngren and FM Jakub Kusa. Now once again this e4 e5 opening, as I've already said. My opening knowledge here is not great. But this is called the Marshall, I think. Isn't it the Marshall? No, this is just Brew Lopez. I thought this was Marshall. Okay. This is also very common theory. Now, I do not know much about it, but I can also see that the players were blitzing here, and I know that there is a lot of theory in these positions. C4 trying to take advantage of the fact that the d pawn cannot take, because then the rook would be hanging, and after b takes c4, bishop takes c4, you still cannot play this. Something tells me this is still theory. Bishop c5 attacking here, bishop e3 forced to protect the pawn. If you go back with the rook, then the bishop would be hanging as the queen is no longer attacked. So bishop e3 takes, queen b8, okay. Attacking here. The bishop goes here to protect the pawn. Queen b6, trading. No trade. Trading. Okay. So what's the count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For both players. Still, okay, so this was the first time that Jakub started thinking in the game. Maybe Jakub's preparation ended around here. But we can see that they traded some pieces. This knight was very nice on d4, though some weak pawns. This pawn a bit backward. But after c5, they got into a rook endgame. This pawn structure, incredibly nice. And I can see here that this quickly ended up being a draw by move repetition. So, very interesting game. They could have kept on playing this rook endgame. Something tells me Gustav very well prepared. Or maybe just playing incredibly fast. We see here 1 hour 18 against 57 minutes. So could very well be a lot of theory, and then they just needed to find a few precise moves afterwards. Now those are, yeah, that's a funny e-file for sure. Those are the results that we have in so far. I will take a short break before I return to these games of the 8th Uppsala Young Champions 2021. Remember, this is round 9. Let's take a quick look at the standings here. We see them, as we've said before, Vignir and Aryan, they are fighting for the first place in their game. Hampus hoping that they will play a draw so that he with a win can catch up to those two, with Jung Min and Hilmir both on 5.5 points. Hilmir playing Hampus in this game, while Jung Min is playing the top seeded girl of the tournament, WGM Victoria Radeva. So I will be right back, approximately 5 minutes. I think I need to warm up my coffee. Didn't drink as much of it as I was expecting. And then I will be right back here with the coverage of the last round of Uppsala Young Champions 2021. See you. And just as I go live, the camera goes out of focus. Am I surprised? No. Maybe we should have had a counter on my cam being out of focus. But okay, hello, welcome. I am back with the 9th round of the Uppsala Young Champions 2021. What? Oh, we have a result. Oh my goodness, this is important for the tournament standings. We do have a draw between Vignir and Aryan. This means that both players are on 7 out of 9, with Hampus needing to win to catch up with the 2 players. Now, this all comes down to tiebreaks. Let's see how the game ended. Because we did see... Oh, we actually saw it further ahead. We saw this position right here. I was mentioning the move h3, forcing black to take here on d4, queen d4, knight dropping back to d6, and white started to pile up pressure against this pawn on d4. Then black in response started to attack the pawn on e4. We saw quite a few trades on d6 with the knight taking on e4. A few more trades, take, and here the pawn structure, white has 3 against 2 on the queen side, with black 3 against 2 on the queen side. White's pawns are split, but white does have a little bit of extra space, and after rook e1, we saw a rook endgame arriving, and now you'd love to do this as black, give a check, capture a pawn, take your free pawn, the better pawn structure, and life being good, but the problem is that you do fall into a back rank mate, so this is not something that you'd probably be quite sad if you did this to yourself. This is something I could do to myself, but instead Aryan, he's a more experienced GM than that. He went king f8, now getting rid of all the back ranked mates. And king f3, Vignir also stopping all this rook e2 nonsense. King e7, c5, protecting the rook. Rook c8, and here they agreed to a draw. Please do not be fooled by the live which says king e4, where black would be able to take this pawn and be a happy camper. But king e4 was actually only because they set the kings up like this on the live board, which means that the position is a draw, and then we can see the draw in here. So the kings were like this, but then when they put them up, probably the white king arrived there first, and the live board thought, oh, king e4. But no, they agreed to a draw right here. I think we should take a look at the tournament standings right now. Let me just update them. There we go. Vignir and Aryan both on 7 points. So far, Vignir has the better tiebreak, so he is likely to be the winner of the 8th Uppsala Young Champions, but nothing is over until the fat lady sings, as they say. So let's jump right to board 2, where Hampus and Hilmir, they are still playing an incredibly important game for who is actually going to win. Now, we left this position we left this position quite a while ago, but not much has happened on the board. I was talking a bit about why not take this pawn here on g2. I also mentioned this move knight d3 check as a potential one. I said I didn't quite like b takes c4, and Hilmir, he decided to go for knight d3 check, where now white is forced to take with the bishop, because after king f1 you're not allowed to castle, and this is this would be a real problem. Now black, or Hilmir in this position, did get the bishop pair back. Here we see that white has the 2 bishops. Probably Hilmir, he didn't like that, so they traded here, and now c takes b5. This is the current position. White currently a pawn up, but still this bishop takes g2 is in the air. Also, he can consider taking with the queen on b5. Queen takes b5 probably gives a very even position, attacking the bishop on g5. Few options of how to play, but my guess is bishop takes f6, g takes f6. Now, if black does castle, it's a good question of whether the king will be weak or not. I'd guess probably not also, because there could come some attack here on the g file with the bishop on b7. But you also have to look a bit out for some rook b1 being a little bit annoying, but my guess is probably queen c6, because I don't want to allow any weird things here. Probably there is this. Okay. A bit confusing, and I can understand why it would be scary to take this pawn. It's just, if you are not taking the pawn here on b5, you could potentially come in trouble after the pawn goes to a4, and now white has 2 against 1 on the queen side, which can be very good in endgames. So Hilmir with a bit of a decision here, but I know Hilmir quite well, and he is addicted to time trouble. He thinks so much in so many positions, and currently we actually cannot see the time, but I could imagine that the reason they haven't gotten further away from this position is because Hilmir, he has been thinking a lot. So my guess, without being able to see the clocks, is that Hilmir, he needs to speed up a little bit, because otherwise he could get into serious time pressure. Now, in the game between Jung-min and Miss Radeva, we left the position here after knight d4. I said white had a comfortable position after knight d4, where she decided to play rook f d8. He did get the bishop knight to b5, but Victoria managed to trade queens here, and they got this position on the board. Now, I really like how Victoria, she has been playing this position so far. We see these 2 against 1 on the queen side, and it is up to black to prove that these pawns are weak, and it's up to white to prove that he can get a pass pawn, something strong and nice here in the endgame. Though I have to say, I'm beginning to like black more and more, because if these pawns are weak, then she could be in the driving seat here if she can win one of them. So yeah, I have to say I like the way the position has developed for her. As for where black should have played a little bit differently, white should have played a little bit differently, sorry. It's difficult to say, because if you move the queen, you need to take care of the bishop on e2, and there's not really a comfortable place to put the queen. If you put it on d3 or d2, then you are walking into the attack of the rook, which is not something which would be very nice. So you're probably forced to trade queens. Too much air in my lungs. Okay. So in this position, you're probably forced to trade queens. You don't really want to allow anything like this, as you don't want to split your pawns. But then maybe knight b5 was the real sinner in this position. He could have considered to just improve his position. And also, of course, thank you so much, Sabina, for the raid. It's great to see you here. I can tell you that at the moment I am currently doing commentary of the 9th and final round of the Uppsala Young Champions 2021. This tournament is being played in Sweden, and yes, I know what you're thinking. Danish girl playing for a Norwegian chess club, doing commentary for a tournament in Sweden. What is this? What can I say? International love. We need to support our fellow Scandinavians, and now we have some Americans here also, so American Romanian. But great to see you. I hope that you had a nice stream. Trying to find out how white could have played a little bit differently in this game, maybe trying to improve the rook here, but then maybe black can do the same as she did before, now winning a tempo. And if she took the other rook from a1 to d1, then she would be losing the a file here. So what to play? This knight b5 is just so natural. You want to get your knight to the b5 square, but this queen e5 move was really, really nice. Maybe rook a d1, he could have played something else. But he's probably also a bit scared of something like this. Can we go for the d6 square somehow? The problem still with rook fd1 is something like this, yeah? And now it's black to play. Though I'm not sure. We do see a development. He played f4. Okay, I did mention this move a little bit earlier. Also, could he have considered knight d6? Oh, my nose is itchy again. Sorry. Okay. Now, could he have considered knight d6? Knight d6, maybe rook a4. And it's now I like black. f4, yeah. Gaining some space. Gaining some space with f4, getting the knight away from the strong e5 square. So probably a good move by Jungmin Seo. It's not really weakening the king because we don't see any dark squared bishops. We don't see any queens on the board. And the knight is not able to go to g4 in this position. So I really like f4. Maybe that was a key move. Or maybe I'm just saying key move because I'm not very good at finding other alternatives in the position. But I like f4. I think it's a good move. So let's try to go to some other games. We do have quite a few results coming in. We see that Milton, who played a great game, really incredible game in round 1. I think he played an incredible game in round 1 where he got a perfect knight against a bad bishop. And if you want to learn something about positional chess, it's definitely a game to check out. I think he was black against Gustav Törngren. And I was really surprised with that game. Now, he also did win this game against Sondra, who I believe to be Norwegian. Once again, d4, best by test. And Milton, he's playing this a6 Queen's Gambit declined. Now, I can say quite a few things about this variation. Probably not as many as some other people can say, but I do know that Milton, he hasn't been taught this by himself. He has been taught this by someone else who's a very big specialist in the a6 Queen's Gambit declined, where I believe he found some inspiration. And there are a few lines in this variation going for bishop g5, and now one of the points of this variation is to bring the bishop to e6 in this position to protect the pawn and to be able to develop the knight to d7 without locking your bishop in on c8. So after e3, we see that the knight went to d7, still keeping some options open here about whether to go c6, whether to go c5. But after bishop d3, he did go c6. Now the bishop usually gets out to d6, also really trying to get the optimal out of your minor pieces, because in many variations of the Queen's Gambit decline, this bishop goes to e7, but you want to get it to a better square. You want to get it to d6 where it does more, and now this knight is attacked and the queen can come to c7 or c8, walking out of the pin. I don't think this is the most challenging variation for black that white has played here. And sometimes you even go bishop f4. I don't know if it's in this position. It could b, sometimes you do wait until h6, but the point of bishop d4, now if queen c7, you go queen d2, giving this bishop on f4 some more protection, because if you went queen c2, then you would drop the pawn on f4, and you're not really scared of these pawns here, because though this pawn on d4, sorry, my face is itchy again. I have hair in my mouth. Okay, though this pawn on d4 can seem a bit isolated, then the e5 square is so strong for white here, and the option of going f5 is also there. This is a big strategic battle. But white decided to play it another way. White went for queen c2, queen c7, and rook fe1. So white, oh, that was the wrong one. White might be trying to go for e4 in this position. Not trying for a minority attack, which probably doesn't work. Let's say rook ab1, which is a normal move in Queen's Gambit, declined. Castles b4, probably black could just meet it by b5 very quickly, since after a4 you don't have time to stop this knight from going to b6. Let's say black had waited with another move like rook fe8, then a5, and white would be the one in the driver's seat, stopping all this c5, stopping this knight from going to b6 and c4. But white is not in time to do that, as the knight comes to b6 very quickly. Therefore, white opted for another plan with rook fe1, castles, and now bishop h4, trying to go to g3, freeing up the knight from protecting the h2 pawn, and also trading this dark squared bishop, saying my bishop on g5 actually does not do a lot of good here, because I don't want to give the bishop pair away, because the knight could just take back. If the pawn had to take back, then yes, we would very much like to take. And here also in this position, let's say white plays a3, there's a chance that black is sometimes threatening some of this stuff, where you want to win the bishop on g3 with the knight. Who is Sandra? Sandra is a Norwegian chess player, as far as I remember. Let me just check to make sure that I'm not saying anything embarrassing here. Sandra is Norwegian. Oh, I know my youngsters. I know my boys. Okay. Sandra is a Norwegian chess player with the rating, no, I forgot to check, with the rating of 2100. Yeah. Oh, sorry, my legs are trying to get comfortable. So instead, bishop h4 is a bit of prophylaxis probably, and after rook fe8, just trying to take the e file here, sometimes preparing some bishop g4 to get the knight into e4. White went rook a to c1, also a natural move, looking down at this c file, maybe looking for knight a4 to c5. The problem is just if you don't play this knight a4, knight c5, it's tough to see what the rook is doing here on c1, because this pawn is very well protected on c6. And then it's because you play e4 at some point, but if you play e4 at some point, then the rook is probably preferred on d1 to protect the pawn on d4, which otherwise could become a little bit weak. Now, Milton, he did go bishop g4, trying to say, if you don't move the knight, I will give you double pawns. Looking down here, trying to get the knight into the center of the board. h3 was played, saying you're more than welcome to give me the bishop pair. I don't see why I'm weak around the king. Maybe I'll play king h1, rook g1, and also taking the e4 square away from the knight. And I've actually had a position like that before, just with the pawn here on h2. The bishop went to g3, where this was annoying for me as black. So understandably, Milton, he didn't want that. He was also trying to say, you know, I don't want to give the bishop pair away. Instead, I want to trade your light squared bishop, as it would give me great control over the light squares on the board, as my pawns are also standing on light squares. So white went e4, a big concession in the center right now. The game is really starting to sharpen up here. I can see that the computer is saying g4 in this position to force the bishop to go to g6 was better than e4. But this is a bit difficult to make yourself, it's a bit difficult to make yourself play this. If you play this, then you'd probably have preferred to keep this rook here on f1, I could imagine, so that when you move your knight, you can go f4, or you can look a bit at e4. But instead, going for e4, trying to create some chaos and also a lot of tension in the center right now. D takes e4, very normal reaction. It's not easy to see others as e5. Now I'm trying to make the move on the board when it's black's turn. Because e5 in this position is a big threat that black has to do something about, as it would attack both the bishop and the knight. He could have considered once again to take this knight on f3 and try to say, okay, now that your pawn is on e3, these pawns might be more weak. But white has a really good center here, so if you can't completely show why this wouldn't be so good, maybe you can play bishop g5 here, look at the rook on c1. Then maybe this is an option. I'd guess rook fg1, maybe trying to bring the knight to h5 or the rook to e6. But Milton already decided that giving away this bishop pair wasn't anything that he wanted to do. He played this a more normal way. Oh, and also he did this in a he did this in a much more clever way than I did, because I strengthened white's center, whereas he started by trading in the center and then creating the double pawns. Okay, so this seems like a nice position for black then. So I found something, and then Milton found the same in a better way. This is typical for the strong players. You will see something and then they will just find a way to improve it. And he also did go for bishop f4, kicking the rook away from c1, a trade on f6. And now Sondra went down the wrong road here, because he played rook takes e8. And after rook... Why not this? I think they both missed a pretty huge point in this position, because black can take this one, and now if you take, there's bishop e5, no? Attacking the queen. And if you take, I can take back. I'm attacking the bishop and I'm attacking on h7. And if you move the queen, then I can take here in a few different ways. Nope, only in one way. If I take like, nope, never mind, in a few different ways. I think they both missed this. And I believe it was possible here also. Once again with the same point as before. Where if you take with the knight, then this isn't possible. And the rook on c1 is still hanging. Because instead, trade, and rook d1. And now, if you look at the white pawn structure, this knight can come to d5. If you look at how weak the white king is, sorry. This looks so bad for white that it's incredible. He played g5, winning a pawn here on g3. But even if he can't play like this, this is just terrible for white. So in this position, I can see he played rook takes e8 very quickly. Milton replied with rook takes e8 back even more quickly. But if they had both spent a little bit more time in this position, I think they could both find that this bishop takes f6 is a great intermediate move, which allows white to hold on in the position actually. Whereas this is just completely different. This is also why you shouldn't play too quickly sometimes. Even if there's something which looks forced to you, then intermediate moves, or Zwischenzugs as they're called in German, they are such an important part of chess because they can alter the whole evaluation and the position. So always take a bit of extra time. This is something that grandmasters, they are really, really good at. Even if there's a position like the opponent captures a piece, try to notice this sometimes. Before they capture back, let's say someone captures a piece, before they capture back, they take a few seconds just to make sure there isn't anything they've missed. They're getting an extra 30 seconds per move. There's not really anything that they are rushing towards. And it's very important not to get caught in these playing too quickly, because this is what happens. And now white was just lost. I am sure if white was calculating this position, he'd find g5 and that he was completely lost after this. So if he had instead sat down in this position, calculated a little bit, and seen, after g5, I'm dead lost. Can I try to find something else? Trying to look a bit at the position, he'd have found this, I believe. And then it would have been a whole different game, because now Milton won after just a few moves. Also notice this, Milton is not trading queens here because this king is much more vulnerable than this king. So instead of trading queens, going into, of course, a better endgame, he's saying, I just want to mate you. There's no reason to trade queens. Bishop f1, the rook joined the attack, bishop e2, and I mean, even the knight could come to this square. But after h5, white even just resigned, because look at this position. You can never trying to open up with d5 because the knight is just taking back, and g4 is also coming, just disrupting the entire king side for white. And yeah, this was how quickly it went wrong for white. But both players missing a great option and opportunity there. So I'm going quite into depth with some of these games, I can feel. Let me just take a sip of coffee. This looks a bit lost. Yeah, I think you are absolutely right. Okay. I'm back. Now we do have other results. We see a draw. Was that a quick draw? Nope. Nose itchy. We need Ellen nose. Oh my goodness. My nose is also getting red when I do this. No, I also drink tea. I've had 2 cups of tea today already. Yes, I did. I did see that. Very nice achievement. Okay, so here we saw an English, and this is the game between 2 CMs. CM Hugo, or Hugo, as I like to say. This is kind of a French way of saying, yes. And now, I said English before, but this is actually transposed into another Queen's Gambit d4 best by test. I can show you how the moves could have come otherwise. So if we see it like this, a6, a4, c5, bishop here, and this, and give me a second. And now, let me see, c5, d4, castles, nope, black to move, knight f6, castles, And yep. Knight c6, castles. Okay, bishop e7. And then we could have had the exact same position as we got in the game. And now I will click on the 8th move in the game, and you will see that the position won't change. The exact same moves, just from another opening. The beauty of transpositions. Okay, but this is much more... this is a much more common way of getting into this position is from the Queen's Gambit than what they played, but this is a highly theoretical line. Now, White decided to take on d5. This is actually not the most common. The most common in this position is to go Queen e2, and you're not dropping this pawn on d4 because cd4 is met by rook to d1, where you can't take on c3 because the queen would be lost. Instead, what Black usually does is castles. There is not a line with e5 in this exact position, I believe. I don't think it works here. I don't think it works because of the king still being in the center, but there is some lines with it. But rook d1, castles, e takes d4, and then in this position they go knight b4 to get this knight in here. But it's actually very important that you don't put this knight on d5 too quickly, because if you do this, then rook d3, rook g3 is a quick, not a slow, but a quick killer in some of these positions. This is very, very theoretical. A lot of games been played in this position. Instead, White here decided to go for d takes c5, and after a queen trade, we got to this position. Now, White keeps some opening advantage, though a lot of pieces have been traded. Going for h3, I guess, to stop this knight g4 to e5 idea. Bishop d7 developing, e4, gaining a little bit of space in the center, trying to develop the bishop. Though this is something that you have to be a little bit careful of sometimes. Because you are weakening some squares here. Now we can also see one of the points of playing h3, because this could be a little bit annoying. But you are weakening some of the dark squares here in the center and on the queen side. Black played knight a5, and now a strange move. White decided to just give away the bishop pair. Now, I don't know if I love bishop pairs too much. I've spoken a bit about them today, or what. I'm a bishop pair fan. Why give the bishop away like this? This knight is terrible on a5. Was the idea to go b5 here? This seems like a lot when you haven't castled. No. No. No, this one is hanging sometimes. Can you do like this? And then do something really cool here? Trying to do this. Knight e5 is a little bit strange. I can see that you're trying to get some kind of grip on the queen side. It's just bishop pair, especially when you've played e4, opening up the position for the bishop pair. The bishop pair loves open positions here. Bishop e2 also. I think bishop e2 you have to be a bit careful of knight b3, and now you're losing the bishop pair again. And this bishop is probably a little bit worse than this bishop, so I guess you'd prefer to lose this bishop. So knight e5, knight c4, knight c4, bishop c6. Now these bishops are just looking down the board, my goodness. e5 was played, weakening some squares. Knight d5. I can see here, I'm sorry, I don't know why this happens. I'm sorry. I'll try to stop. I can see the computer here is not a fan. Knight d5 is such a natural move. You put the knight in the center of the board and you say, now I'm pretty happy, buddy. I was going to say boy, but then I changed it to buddy, and then it merged together. Okay. Knight d5 is a very natural move, but knight e4 here would attack the bishop on c5, and getting a knight into d6, this could be a real problem for black. And if you'd gone knight here instead, knight d7, then you're taking away the e4 square for the knight. So this is the difference between these two moves. Knight d5 blocks the bishop on c6, and knight d7, then this bishop is still open. Now I think this was a great option for white, as Rocky is also saying in the chat, knight e4. Trying to go for knight d6, attacking the bishop. This looks nice. But instead, white went for knight takes d5, but we do see a bishop pair for black here. I don't believe you want to do like this. Well, no, black doesn't have to take. I'm sorry, this pawn is protected. That was what I was missing. So this you don't want to do. Now you will drop a pawn here sooner or later. Or black could try to play some f6, getting this protection of the knight away. Hiccups, 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 hiccups. Instead, bishop e3. This also looks like a good move, trying to remove the bishop pair, taking here and taking. Now we see the knight is actually doing a great job. The bishop would have to drop back to d5, and after knight c4 again, getting into these dark squares. So for sure, black doesn't want to take this one. Instead, black decided for a good thing, I think, because otherwise, dropping back with the bishop, now we really see some dark squares getting into trouble. Maybe knight b6, but bishop c4 and going into this position, I believe, was a very good choice from black, just saying, okay, I know I messed up, so let's take this position, which is probably just a draw. And it all comes back to this knight d5 move, where knight d7 would have kept some advantage and would have allowed black to keep on playing. But they got to this position, bishop e3, great move, by the way, great move. Really forcing this position and getting the bishop pair away from black. And let's just quickly scroll ahead. Black put the pieces on light squares, and white put the pieces on dark squares, and we saw a fairly quick draw in this position. Also, when I was playing last year, it wasn't allowed to agree for a draw before move 30, and this is move 31. So they were allowed to take a draw. Now we have an important result. We have a draw on board 3 between Jungmin Seo and Victoria. We left the position after f4. Victoria went knight g6, and after this, g3, protecting this pawn right here, but I'm not quite sure why you need to protect it, because it's not really attacked. And now you're opening more up for this bishop right here. And you're also allowing this. This might be more important than opening up for the bishop. Getting these doubled pawns. Oh my god, my nose. I can't help it. I don't know what I have to do. Okay. Getting these double pawns here. And with this pawn being on a dark square and this bishop being on a light square. This is not better for white. This is not better for white anymore. So if white wanted to try to play more for a win in this position, definitely should have played something else than g3. let's ask ourselves what is Black's idea? Black's idea is to go bishop takes b5, so why not move the knight here? Move the knight to d4, move the knight to c3. Then which square do we prefer? Well, if we go to d4, we really have to look out for some bishop a4, trying to look down here at this rook d2, then maybe rook d7, piling up on the c file could be annoying. So probably knight c3, taking away this square for both the rook and the bishop would be a better move. Jung Min-seo is the current Swedish champion. Yes, I know actually. It was such a great performance by him when the Swedish championship was played back in August or July, I think, where he won ahead of many GMs. GM Pia Kramling and GM Tyr Hiller were both playing the tournaments, also many other strong GMs. And Jung Min winning was very well done. But he probably should have played knight c3 in this position, because after g3, bishop takes b5, and now Victoria, she improved the position of her worst placed piece, which was the knight on g6. From here, the knight cannot do much, so she found a better home for it on d5, where it can come to, on e7, where it can come to d5. Bishop f3, trying to stop the knight from going to d5. Rook b8, protecting the pawn. Also keeping in mind that this rook would be hanging if we were trying to win a pawn. This would be a very sad way to end the game. So rooks were traded. Rook a1, g6, creating some luft. Rook a7. Now if you go rook a6, I believe rook d6. And as I said before, because this pawn is on a dark square and this bishop is on a light square, then you can really attack this pawn. And also we see, because of the placement of these black pawns, it's actually impossible for white to penetrate with the king. And since these pawns are also doubled, you can use them for creating a break somewhere, which means that it's probably only black who can be better in this position, trying to bring the knight this way now. So instead he went to a7 to attack the knight and get the rook to b5. But after rook d6, they did agree to a draw. Probably Victoria, she was the one who offered, since she was the one who made the last move. If white decided to take here, I believe this is probably why they agreed to a draw, then you can take back with the rook, as rook takes b6 would be a problem, but you can take back with the pawn. Now, I believe white would bring the king, trying to get it to d4, but black would also be bringing her king. Now, this is a few moves made. King g4, then you are dropping this pawn. So I played something wrong along the way, maybe d4 instead, trying to stop the king from coming all that way. The king would have to block this pawn from going forward. And probably the reason why they agreed to draw is because it's very difficult for black to improve here. You can't bring the king very easily without any of these pawns dropping. And if you start pushing them, well, then your king is never getting out. How can white win here? I don't know. Alireza is winning. Oh, boy is going to qualify for the candidates, and I'm gonna lose a bet. Yay. Okay, that's a bet I'm happy to lose though. So, yeah. And I believe white has to take the knight, because otherwise this is threatened. So this is pretty much forced. King f2. This seems very plausible. Is white ever gonna go f? No, white's never gonna go f5. They could have played a few more moves, but I believe they know their rook endgames. And my nose is itchy. And the reason they agreed for a draw is because neither of them can ever really improve in this position. This king is kind of stuck. And if this king, oh my nose, I'm so sorry, I can't control it. If the king goes too much forward, then you're gonna lose these pawns, and it's not easy pushing the pawns either. Let's say rook b8. Rook c7, rook c3. Ah, yes. The rook, yeah, that's a great point. The rook isn't tied to the b7 square. The rook isn't tied to the b7 square. I believe they could have played it out. And there was no real reason to not play it out. But probably they saw the position, they thought draw, and they agreed. So, this is what sometimes happens. Now, let's take a look at the updated standings. Much at stake in this game? I'm not sure. For Jung Min, he was probably playing for 3rd or 4th place if he had won. So important, I mean, of course, important game for both of them, because if they win, they're gonna go quite a lot higher in the rankings than they will if they do draw like they did. But here we are seeing the standings. Currently, all the 3 highest players here, they have played all 9 games, where Hampus and Hilmir, they are still playing against each other. Hampus is able to catch up with both Vignir and Aryan. We see Vignir still with a little bit of a better tiebreak, but as far as I remember, Aryan was 1.5 point in tiebreaks behind. Now he is only 1 point behind. So a lot can happen. We see Jung Min with a great tiebreak of 46. It looks like, no, Edwin Trost has the highest tiebreak of the entire tournament with 46.5 actually. So he's played some very, very strong players, though a little bit further down in the ranking. Right here. Now a lot of games still underway. Some games finished. Previous winner Simban Dal lost in this game to FM Khan Kusiksari. Never know how to pronounce it. We see here, this was almost a fianchetto Benoni, but Black did not at any point play a6. And here he went queen b4, trying to pin it to win it. Some pressure on the b2 pawn, but still hasn't quite developed. Queen d3, protecting the pawn on c4, which was attacked. Now knight h6. Sim is quite known for this little bit of weird opening lines. As we can also see, he doesn't quite develop his pieces normally. My guess is that this was pointed at getting the knight to f5 and to d4, but also this g6 in the opening, not playing e6, going into a regular Benoni. This is something Sim, he does very, very often. When he won the tournament last year, I don't know if any of you know this, but Sim, he was the winner of the tournament last year, and with the white pieces, the openings he played, a3, 1 a3, 1 a4, 1 h3, 1 h4, and 1 g3 in his 5 white games, and he won the tournament ahead of some pretty strong players. So he is known for this little bit of special opening play that sometimes, well, it worked for him last year, but in this game it didn't quite work. h3 and e3 taking the d4 square away from the knight. So now the knight is actually standing on f5, looking a little bit awkward because it doesn't have too many other squares it can go to. It has to be careful about not getting trapped, and probably white has an opening advantage here. Now be careful, do not grab this pawn because rook f to b1, and then you have huge problems with the queen, which is now trapped. In Danish, well, in English this is called the poisoned pawn, but in Danish we call this the will pawn. And it has quite a funny and cute story behind it, in my opinion. But okay, in English it's called a poison pawn, so you clearly do not have the same story attached to this pawn, so I will tell it. But he played h5, knowing that, of course, he cannot take the pawn on b2. The pawn was protected, also looking for a b4 break. I knew I shouldn't have started, because then I would be forced to tell the story. Okay, so the story behind this pawn here on b2 and why we call it the will pawn. Once upon a time in a country far away, a man had a son. This man, he really liked chess, and so did the son. The man, he got very, very sick, and he was on his deathbed and he was dying. Now, the man, he calls his son. Of course, it's very important to remember or to know this man was incredibly rich. There wasn't that thing he didn't own. And he called his son and he said to the son, "My son, I will give you everything I have and everything I own if you promise me to never in your life take the pawn on b2 or on b7, depending if you're white or black, of course." And then he wrote this in his will, and the boy never took the pawn on b7 or b2, and therefore inherited all of the father's wealth and all the money, all the buildings and apartments and everything. And this is why we call it the will pawn, because the will, it stands in the will that you're not allowed to take this pawn, and if you do, you will lose your wealth. But in English, it's called a poison pawn. So that's not as cute. It's just poisoned. You're not allowed to take it. You should have some kind of cool story. Can somebody fact check that story? I think it's nice. I've never fact checked it. I got it told when I was 10 years old, I think. And I was like, wow. I actually believed that it was true. And I haven't fact checked it since, because I like the story so much and I want it to be true. So I haven't checked if it actually is, because I don't want to be disappointed. Just saying. Now, at depth 1000. Okay, h5. Enough about that will pawn on b2. Pawn was protected. Queen c7, knight d1. Really looking for this b4 break, I guess. Knight e5, takes, and now rook a5. I see here with my great computer depth that this was a bad move, and that white should have put this bishop on a5 instead to block the pawn and attack the queen, because after rook a5 he allowed this very sharp blow in the center with e4, where if bishop takes, he had the option of taking on. Goodness, this is way too complicated for me. Okay, so the point is takes. If the bishop drops back, I guess we take this pawn on h3. If the queen drops back, then we have 3 pawns. For the piece, we can bring the bishop into e5, threatening some queen h2 stuff. This is starting to get very, very dangerous for white, I assume. So you can't take back on g3. You will drop the queen back. And knight f5. And now black won this pawn on g3 in exchange for the one on e5, opening up for the queen, opening up for the bishop. So this would have been a great trade for black. Also remember e4, knight d4, then coming to this b3 square and really getting some nice control over the dark squares in the center. And let's just see if queen takes. What is the trick after this move? Because I don't know. Knight takes g3 again, because f takes g3, there's bishop f5, winning the rook on b1. Oh, this is great. Oh, so e4 was actually really strong. Really, really strong. I think understandable that both of these players missed the move e4, because knight takes g3 is quite a difficult move to find, I'd say. And even if you find it, you have to evaluate correctly after this. Bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes g3. It's a lot of calculation, and it's very, very complicated. Instead, after rook a5, Sim went for knight d6. The game continued with a few moves here, and now Khan, he won this pawn on c5, and I think he was well, he was almost sailing smooth until this position, where Black has managed to create quite some pressure against the weak white king on g2, pushing some of the pawns, opening for the rook, potentially opening for the bishop. This bishop is great on h4, and now keeping the bishop just to keep the bishop pair. It's almost always compensation if you have the bishop pair, as I've said quite a few times today. And g5, the pawn was almost sacrificed, but Sim trying to open up some lines here. Sim had 1 hour 7 against Khan's 6 minutes. I didn't even notice this. Oh my goodness. So he was pressuring Khan a lot of time. A lot on time. And he has managed to fight his way back into the game, but of course he cannot see the computer evaluation. And he probably got a bit too stuck on trying to pressure his opponent on time, because after e5, this was a big mistake, opening up for the rook on the 7th rank, and taking this pawn I can see was the best option. Now trying to say that the king on g2 isn't as weak anymore, but instead bringing the queen into the attack. Now we see it switching up. Who is attacking whom? Queen d6. And once again, e4 probably played too quickly, because white could take on f6, and though black got the piece on f4, now this king is very safe on f6, while all of the pieces are attacking black. This rook can come to g1 and also attack, and this is game over. Now attacking on the dark squares, we see opposite colored bishops, but opposite colored bishops are best for the person who's attacking. And now the rook on b8, there was a threat here. If you're trying to save the rook, then a check, king here, and where is the mate? Maybe just rook g1. You don't have a good way of protecting here on g6, because after rook g7, then this one is hanging. So instead the rook went, he tried to say I have 2 passed pawns, but the bishop also lost. Queen d6, king h1, no checks. Notice, because here there would be a check, and now you have to calculate whether the queen can come into the attack. Oh, there should be some kind of mate here. But king h1, very, very safe, just making sure that there are no checks, and now you're the one who can start giving a lot of checks, and now forcing a trade of queens, which meant that Sim in this position resigned. Okay, what a game, and more results are rolling in. So important, the second board between Hampus and Hilmir did end in a draw. So now the top standings all come down to tie breaks between between Vignir and Aryan. Let's see how the game between Hilmir and Hampus finished. Now, we left the game after... Nope, this is the wrong c takes b5. Where's the c takes b5 we were looking for? Oh! Ah, okay, so we had a problem with the live. We had a problem with the live boards, or maybe I'm just not... Maybe I'm just not very good at looking at live games, because in this position, Hampus, he did not play c takes b5 as we were analyzing a little bit. Instead, he took on f6, g takes f6, and queen b1 here. Now, along castles from Hilmir, he is saying, I don't care if I don't have any pawns in front of my king. I'm threatening the knight on d2. So you're probably forced to exchange queens going into this endgame. We saw c takes b5. Now, once again attacking this knight on d2. He is currently a pawn down. And after knight f3, he went into this rook game, being a clear pawn down, maybe. Is this a clear pawn? Because rook b3 protected with a4. Maybe he should have attacked this one instead with rook g8, trying to win back the pawn. It's a little scary playing a move like rook g8 when you're for sure down a pawn, and maybe white can decide to keep the knight, where here you get the knight off the board and you have a rook in game. But this is just a pawn, and maybe you're winning it back if you go rook g8 instead. Of course, you can't go g3 because the knight is hanging. Trying to protect it with rook g1 would also be a problem, because now there would be a pin. Then you'd have to protect it with king f1. But now white can never castle. Was he scared of king e2? But king e2 here, and now we're also protecting these two. If this, then we can give a check on d2 and next winning the pawn on b2, and then next winning the pawn on g2. I can also see that the engine says it's a better option, so it's easy to say that it is a better option. I don't believe these variations are too difficult to calculate. My guess is that Hilmir did not have a lot of time, so he tried to simplify the position and say that he just had a rook in game with a pawn down, and that he should be able to hold this. He also went to g2. The king went to f1, but still white is definitely the one pushing in this game with an extra pawn. Though maybe Hampus also in time pressure, and king d1 falling into a threefold, as Hilmir could now claim the draw with king c7. Let's just count this to be sure. Let's see, where do we... 1. No, that's the one. Okay. 1, 2. Did they agree for a draw, or did Hilmir claim a draw? Because it's not been threefold. 1, 2. I don't think it's a threefold. So maybe they agreed for a draw. Probably. You can understand why Hampus would be a little bit scared, because yeah, white can claim. That's true. Maybe Hampus claimed. I can see why you would be a little bit scared, because this king is becoming very active very, very quickly. So what would you have to play as white here? Okay, let's say we get this position. Computer is saying f4 and like this. Okay, no, I can understand why you wouldn't want to play this as white though, because you're dropping the pawn, yeah? Ah, wait. You don't want to do this. Now white is for sure better. And if you take with the rook... Oh, no, this race you don't want. Maybe you do want the race, but... Imagine having to calculate this with little time on the clock. No, very scary. I can understand. I can sympathize with that draw. Yeah. Very importantly, let's take a look at the standings. Now that all top 5 boards have finished, let me update it right here. Now we see Vignir still ahead with a whole tiebreak point more. Draw secures 3rd place. Ah, yeah, also true, also true. For sure, Hampus has now secured his 3rd place. So number 1, 2, and 3 here are our 1st, 2nd, and 3rd places. So a huge congratulations. I don't know if we can say congratulations to Hilmir just yet. I think that he will win. It doesn't seem that that Arjen is catching up in tiebreaks. Also, Hilmir, he did play this tournament last year. Last year he didn't do so well as far as I remember. But yeah, we do see Vignir and Arjen with 7 points. Hampus in 3rd with 6.5. And we have Jungmin, Jakub Nemec, Hilmir Freyr, Khan Kusuksari, I don't know how to pronounce that, and those 1, 2, 3, 4 in 4th to 7th place with 6 points, and Victoria in 8th place with 5.5. So of course a huge congratulations to all of those. We see that a lot of the games have finished. It's more the games down here further in the table that we see are still going. So a huge congratulations to those. It's been very exciting chess that we've been seeing. Now sometimes when you look at results, you can think, oh, it's a draw, that's so boring. But we've definitely seen that these weren't just boring draws. There's been a lot of strategic and tactical and positional aspects of all the games today. So that's been a lot of fun, in my opinion. Though we're not saying goodbye just yet, because we do still have more games to go, and I think we should not forget those. Now we've been focusing a lot on the top boards. Let's try to go to this game between Ludwig and Jakub. Ludwig, of course, young, promising Swedish player. He is rated almost 2400, and I guess that he's just going for the IM title. No reason to get the FM title just yet. He has 1 or 2 IM norms already, I believe. So yeah. And I believe he's also had the rating either live or not. So my guess is that he's just going directly for the IM title, playing here on board 6 against Czech player Jakub, who I haven't heard of before. The Czech players, they do tend to like this tournament quite a bit. I've seen several of them this year and last year. Now an interesting position here, we have a bishop pair for black, where bishop pair for black and a little bit more space. Initial reaction is that black might be a little bit better, though the pawn on c4 we might have some problems with, so maybe black is not worse at all. Ah, Jakub from 2007, my goodness. He is young, he's 14. Let me take some more coffee, because I have both a cough and a hiccup. So, Jakub, very, very young. Let's go quickly through this. Caro-Kann with d3, going straight into the endgame. Ludwig is saying, I don't care if we're going into an endgame. I believe I'm a stronger player and I will outplay you. It is said that it is in the endgame that the stronger players, they do shine. Here, Ludwig decided to give away the bishop pair in exchange for some pawns in the center. We see that the game developed like this. Now h4 trying to stop any shenanigans on the king side. I like this maneuver of rook h7 to d7, looks very cute. Rook b1 trying to prepare some attack on the queen side. Many more moves were played. Now rook d1, he was looking at some d4. Jakub said no thank you, playing c5, just stopping this. And now some concessions by both players as they are moving their pawns and they're saying, okay, you're playing c5, so I'm not gonna get to play d4, you're probably not gonna get to play b5, I'm giving away this b4 square. Though it is quite difficult for you to take control of it, then you'd have to go bishop d8 to a5. And do you really want to use the b4 square? The c5 pawn could get weak. So a lot of things to consider for sure in these positions. They haven't played these pawn moves with an easy heart. It's definitely been something that they've thought a lot about. You don't just move a pawn, you think about it. And b6, the rook went to c1. Probably he could have been looking at some b4, but we've already seen that the pawn stays on b2. So maybe it was more of an a5 break he was looking for. Rook b8, rook b3. A few developments, the king running a little bit. And f3, saying now if you take rook f1, move back, then you are in huge trouble, my friend. Because you cannot take my knight as there is a pin on your pawn. Pin it to win it. So the bishop had to move back. Please notice how black is not taking this one, as black would be left with this bishop blocked by all its pawns, while white has this one which can roam around the board. So keeping the bishop pair, of course. And we see that he was looking for an a5 break with this rook a3, I believe. Now bringing the rook back, and black was the one to push his pawns on the queen side. Many things happened. A c4 break. Okay, so we are getting closer and closer to where we saw the position for the first time. Trying to exchange a set of rooks. Trying to argue that this pawn on c4 is weak. He didn't take it though. He went for bishop a7. Now, I want to know if you know that song. What's the problem? I was thinking this, but then I realized knight b6. Can you hear? We can always play this if we don't just win a piece like this, which we do. So why not take? There's no bishop d6, that one is hanging. And if this b3, why did he not take the pawn? What was he afraid of? Maybe this? The knight moves. And what do you do? This squares. Ah, bishop a2! Woo! And then the b2 pawn is hanging. b2 pawn is hanging. Yes. Okay. So I believe this was the reason. But knight b6 though. Nope. Nope. This doesn't work. Rook takes e7. Okay, I have to take back. Check. Now I need to move my king to a good square. Otherwise, is that a problem? Hey, I thought I was genius. It's definitely something to do with bishop a2. Can we improve the variation? It has to be something like this, no? I don't like this. I don't like this for black. Seems wrong. Not this. No. We don't want this with black. So what do we do? Knight c4. They both saw something and they were both afraid. King d8? Screwsy. Have you been practicing? Have you been practicing? Yep, king d8. Great move. Now, I need to be sure that I'm not missing anything again. But it does seem like king d8 was a sneaky one. Attacking the rook, saying, how do you want to defend? And here we do go bishop d7. Yeah. Rookity rook is trappity trap. No! I moved the king. Still trapped. And now something... No, but this one is not hanging. And this one is not trapped anymore. But then this one. Okay. I can I can understand why you don't take the pawn. We don't want to calculate this. Yeah, well, I can just move the rook, but then the piece on b6 is in trouble. Okay. Instead, bishop a7, trying to get out of some of these things, maybe trading a rook, bringing the bishop back. So it seems that Ludwig, he was a big fan of getting to trade a rook in this game, which I can understand. He wants to free this rook so there is no pressure against the pawn on b2, which there would be if there were two rooks. And then he probably wanted to bring it somewhere around like this, put some pressure on the pawn on c4. Bishop b4 was played, knight f1. Now I believe this is what black is trying to do, and then set up a fortress with these opposite colored bishops is what I'm trying to say. And even finding, sorry for my arrows, even finding a move that white should play here is probably not too easy. Because if you move the rook, then, okay, no, you can still take back with the bishop, but a move like rook b3 or... Oh, you're not a pawn down. You are not a pawn down with black here, so this should be a draw for sure. And Ludwig, he's playing for the win, so he doesn't want to allow these opposite colors. But his knight is going on an adventure now. We see the bishop pair trying to shine. He's also trying to play a bit on his opponent's time. We see 3 minutes 54 against 27 minutes. This is Ludwig, he really has to come up with something here if he wants to win the game. Also having to be careful about not getting a little bit worse, since they are playing on two sides of the board and black has the bishop pair. Now, the amount of games that we still have in progress, 1, 2, 3, 4 games only, and this is one of them. Let's take a look at this game. Alexander or Stromberg against Edwin Trost. Edwin Trost is almost rated 2300 and from 2007. We saw that he's the one with the best tie breaks in the entire tournament. So this means that even though he's further down on the ranking list so far, he is the one to have met the the opponents who have done the best so far. And Edwin, you know, I can only speak well of him. He did beat me last year, so of course I have to say some very, very nice things to make me feel better about myself. This position is chaotic though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against 6 pawns. Edwin just lost the pawn on b7, but his pieces are very, very active. Rook on g6. This rook is pointing down. He's attacking a bishop, which has trouble moving. And this d pawn is free. I'd guess that he has a winning position in this game, without knowing for sure, of course. Now, this queen is very active. If the king goes to a place like h6, maybe queen e8. But then also rook g8 can come. Now, this pawn here is protected. I think white is in serious trouble, despite being up a pawn. Black has tremendous compensation. Now, if we take a look at the other games, here we have Adam Frank against Jung Hyun Seo, who is the little brother of Jung Min, who did get fourth, or who is probably going to get fourth, it seems. Jung Hyun here playing with the black pieces. Now, exchange extra for white, but 1 pawn for black. We spoke a little bit about this. When is it enough? Looking at this position, black is very active, but the problem for black here is the weakness of the king. Now, if this rook could just get to c7, then this pawn on g7 would be lost. And it would be very difficult to avoid some mating attacks on the back rank. Now, this pawn is running though. This is something you have to keep in mind. Some knight e3 could come in and this rook down here. So a very, very complicated position for sure. And white is down to 3.5 minutes. I'd say with the time advantage and with the activity, black has enough compensation. This could look very scary. Be careful, you cannot take the pawn because a check would win the rook on c4. And if you decide to go for this check, now you cannot play king f2 because this check is annoying. It's the same with king g1. This check comes again. So you're forced to go to e2, but you're dropping this one. I don't think you can play rook c7. Rook f8 to mate on h8, yeah. Yeah. This is also very possible. Now, if we give this check, maybe we can run this way. I'm not sure it's a draw even if you take on g7. Because I can run with my king. Oh no, it is a draw. It is a draw. Yeah, it is a draw. Yeah, okay. So after the c4, rook c7, this, let's say king e2 and taking here, this would be a draw because you don't move this rook. If you move this rook, then black can run this way. But you just take this rook, and now there's no way for the black king to run out. Also, as said by Akyat, be careful, because this would be mate. Now, we don't take this one here, but can we checkmate? I think we can. I think we can. So the king would have to go here. Is this a draw then? King e2. This is the only check. Oh, the game actually finished in a draw now. I can see. Oh, okay. The game finished in a draw. White played rook f2, f8. Now, I really want to see the evaluation of this. Okay, computer is also saying draw here with some checks. White played rook f2, f8 and a check on a1, and the players actually agreed to a draw. I believe the reason for this is that this is the only move, and now a check. And even if you wanted to try to get out of the checks, you actually couldn't. And if you wanted to run with your king to f3, be careful, check, mate. That's a cute one. Don't do this. This would be a problem. So it's a perpetual check, and since I can see that the computer is saying 0 zeros, it means that white doesn't have anything better. No, black doesn't have anything better than to just give all the checks. No g5 ideas. I think h5, and there's still a mate threat. So the players agreed for a draw. Now we only have 2 games running. No, we do have 3 games running. You could definitely see yourself playing king f3. Yeah. Hashtag me too. This game, 4 against 3. Bishop endgame. Now, bishop endgames. Bishop endgames. Draw. Is my reaction. I have no clue. So I'm wondering though, why not have played h5? Because the king is not... Oh, maybe there's some bishop c5. Okay, white pushing. White pushing. White pushing. White pushing with this bishop c5 stuff. And the king coming to d3. Oh, black is in trouble. I think black is in trouble. Yeah. This bishop c5 is not very nice. Also, yeah, a5. And then let's say black makes a move. a5, bishop moves. Bishop c5, we always have to calculate the pawn endgame. We always have to calculate the pawn endgames here. Which endgames are the toughest to play? All of them. Not kidding. They're all the toughest. Now, Ellen, your cam is out of focus, so let's fix that one. If I know how to Twitch. There we go. Okay. All of them are the toughest to play. This one definitely also tough to play. You know, I'm just gonna go to a game to check out the developments because I don't want to say anything about that one. Wow, what happened here? Some developments. I said Ludwig, he was trying to play for a win by keeping the knight, but after this knight h3, rook a1, he saw himself forced to go back to d2. And a trade, bishop g2, rook e1, and okay, he went for king c3 because now you can't protect this pawn. King e6. Ah, if you take, there's rook takes b2. Okay. I think they will play a little. This is the current position. I think they will play a little and then the game will be a draw. Now, of course, opposite colored bishop endgames with major pieces on the board, they're never just a draw. I believe this should be a draw. I can imagine some tricky positions, but this should not be enough. I mean, white is not getting allowed to play anything like this with the rook coming to f6 ever, I think. Oh, probably bishop f1 is better here though. But then bishop g5. If rook f7, you can trade and go b3. Some tricks left. I have a hiccup coming. So sorry. Do you think you should be able to trade a pawn for 5 minutes on your clock? No. Worst idea in the history of chess. That would be a whole other game. Because sometimes you have positions where you're like, can I please just remove that one pawn? Then I'd be so happy. Otherwise, maybe it would be your opponent who could pick the pawn, but then sometimes you also only want to remove pawns, and then you can play games where now no matter which pawn you move, you're checkmated, or it's terrible. Terrible. Funny idea, but does not work at all in practice. So it could be a funny, Screws, I'm not gonna talk too much down on your idea, because if you think it through and you come up with some small details, other rules, I think you could make a great game. The Screwsy variant of chess. Now, I believe this will be a draw, but still tricks for sure. In this game with Edwin, after queen b7, he played king f8. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of king f8 at all. The king is so safe here. What's the... Oh. I missed this. Okay. Don't tell my parents about this, please. Do not tell my parents about this. No, king h6. He went for king f8. Though. Here. I'm confused. Oh, he cannot play this. No. No, I didn't. Oh, it's protected! Okay, so you can play d3 because take here, take, and this one is hanging. Let's say a move like this. Maybe we even include a little bit of a check and the king moves, and then there could also be a check here, and then the rook goes in between and we're checkmating. So that was just quick variation. But I don't believe you can play d3. But then why not? I mean, in this position, you should hide your king somewhere else, no? I don't know, I'm getting in trouble somehow. King f8, yeah, he also spent quite a lot of time on this move. But still, this bishop a3, I mean, what do you do? Now, I said I thought his position was great, but how the turns have tabled. Now if you play d3, at least draw. Probably at least draw. You play queen c3. This is getting scary though. This is getting real scary. What happens if here? Looking at this pawn. Oh, this is getting scary. This is now 3. I can count. This is now 2 pawns for black. This is now 2 pawns for black. White! White! Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. D3, rook E3. Huh? Rook E3. There's no... Are you forgetting some bishop C5? Oh, no, no, in the other variation. Here. Ah! Sorry. D3. Bishop E3. Ah! This does indeed look better than a draw. I agree. I agree. So, yeah. Queen... This was actually played. Okay, so now here, there's no queen d4 check. No queen d4. But can white play something better? Let's say we take here. Are we in treble? We could be in treble. We shouldn't do like this. This could be treble for black. But like this. Still draw? I'm so confused. Okay, D3. Both players are low on time. I'm happy I'm not in there. Well, actually, I would love to play chess. But this is a very tense situation for both of them. D3. Bishop E3, rook E3 on the board. Are we going to see some kind of draw here? Because this pawn is looking scary. Also, can black escape the draw? Guess is no. Guess is no. Because king f7, queen f5. And if you go back, white can go back. And yeah, I'd be so scared. I'd be so scared. I believe we're gonna see a draw here. But I like that Edvin is sitting down and calculating, because I mean, if you can escape this in some manner which makes sense, then you do have a potential queen. It would be very, very brave to keep on playing. And I don't believe you can get out of the perpetual check. Because if you're trying to get out, then you need to bring either your queen or your rook back. And no. Then it's because you were finding some way to run around, but then you also have to be scared of this rook. And does this game affect tiebreak? No clue. Also, I can see tiebreaks haven't changed in forever, so I believe Vignir will win, but of course we don't know until all games are finished. But with only 3 games left, it seems like he will be the winner. Now, Edvin doesn't have a lot of time left, so I think we should just try to stay a little bit at this game to see what he will move. We can also quickly look at this game between Jakub and Ludwig. Okay, Ludwig is still thinking in this position where we left off. This bishop endgame, a4, king f4, bishop c5, bishop d8 was played. So white calculated this pawn endgame, said I am winning, which is very true, I believe. Yeah, white is winning, white is winning. White is winning. So therefore, black could not exchange. Black had to go bishop d8, looking at this pawn on h4. Also, there was no king d3 earlier, so king f3 wouldn't come with the tempo on the pawn on f3. But yeah, yes, I know. I said let's not change, and then I immediately changed. Edvin still thinking in this position though, going down under 2 minutes, but he is getting a 30-second increment each game, each move, though he will not be getting any additional time after move 40. So this is the final time that they have left for the remainder of the game. Currently on move 37. Not that it makes a difference for the time situation anyway. There's also a chance that white has offered a draw, but very mature of Edwin thinking in this position, I think. Trying to find out if he's going for the win with king f7, or if he's going for some kind of, or if he's going for a draw with king h8. I don't think white has the option of choosing if black decides to go back to h8 to say, will I take the draw or not? I don't think. Though, is this something you have to calculate? Threatening a checkmate on f8? And we can only really protect that like this, and then queen here. Now if you go back, there's a mate. Maybe you just couldn't go king f8, king h8. Because also if you go queen g7, then white can always trade. We bring the king. Is rook g3 a defense? I don't think so. Because if zigzagging to a7 and picking up the rook on e3, also an option. Aha. But you have to look out for this one. And now there are no more checks. Now maybe white has to be careful. The point was if black decides to go back, then... Oh, there is a check. There is a check. My bad, my bad, my bad, my bad, my bad. Yes, 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 yes. So, yeah. Aha. So black couldn't go to h8. It just wasn't possible. Also because of this zigzag stuff. So he had to go to f7. Queen takes f5. King e8. Queen c8. He has to be careful to not lose this rook here. But can he avoid it? King f7. Queen b7. And now the rook has to go in between maybe. And white is definitely with the one playing for the win here. Ah, this was so clever. This was so clever. I changed my mind. White is winning. I changed my mind. White is winning the game. It's too many pawns in the rook endgame. So maybe he went to f8. But queen a8 here, I think. And if the rook goes back, then we go here. And you can't protect. Oh, maybe you can go here. Wait. We give the check on b8. But then, okay, here. And then we give the check. Okay, we have... What? King h2? Buddy! No, 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 no. Why? What was wrong with this check? This is so complicated. I can't find my way around. Ah, so many checks. Goodness. Okay. Well, king h2. King h2 is a great move. Maybe it's just incredible prophylaxis. Just saying, what are you going to do? If you play d2, if you play d2, checkity check checks. And now if you go here, I give the checkity check checks and I take. So you have to move the king. If you move the king here, then this checkity check checks when the rook on e... No! Now the rook is protected. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. I need coffee. Imagine having only an extra 30 seconds per move playing this game. I'd be so stressed. I'd be so stressed here. Oh, why did he suddenly go to 2 minutes? Okay. Clocks. Nope, he didn't go to 2 minutes. Whoa. He played queen c2. What? Aha, attack the rook. Ask the rook where you're gonna go. Oh my god, he is sitting with 20 seconds. OCB, we're seriously tempted to say check when you put your opponent in check. Now you'll be tempted to say checkity check instead. Yeah, checkity check. That's what I like. Queen b4. Aha. Maybe gonna put his rook on here. Oh, wait, what? This is on the board? Oh, this breaks my heart. Oh, this breaks my heart. No, but queen e2 I can take. And then I go here, and then I go here, and I just take the pawn because the pawn in game is won. This is lost. Oh, that breaks my heart. Oh my god. And imagine playing this game yourself. This is also why I said I would want to be in their shoes, because if you make a mistake, I'm not going to say when you make a mistake, but if you make a mistake, this is one of the things that's they just hurt so incredibly much. And I just know this from my own games. I know how much this hurts. This is an unimaginable amount of pain. I can't explain how much pain this is. I cannot explain. He was scared of something like this. And then it's difficult to see what white should play. Black should play, sorry, something like this, but your pawn is never moving forward. Maybe even c5 and queen c4 is a threat. You have no checks, you have no nothing. Maybe it was just lost from where we were looking at it. Oh, I can see that because the game ended, I can see the computer evaluation, and I can see that it was actually just lost. Well, not just lost, because it's never just. It's never just, but if we go back to this position, I liked what Edwin had done, but king f8 was a huge mistake. And of course king h6 didn't work because of checkmate, and this was also a bit iffy, but what? This is the best move? No, come on. What if I go king g8? Yeah, king g8. This, no. Leech's computer says king f6 is bad. No. King g8 seems much better. Now, if you want to give a check, you go here, but then I go back. And if you want to give a check, I go back. And then we take a draw like this. I think he missed. He definitely missed bishop a3 here. Because if you see bishop a3, there's just no way you're going for king g8. It's way too much. I don't believe you can go for for king g8. Yeah, there's no way you don't go for king g8 if you see bishop a3. It's a little bit of a weird move, this bishop a3 and this down here, but you can just see it immediately. And maybe he saw it, but he thought he could play d3, and only after did he realize rook takes e3. Now, and that the mate on g2 was protected. This was also what I realized, but it really took me some time. And when you're sitting in the situation and you're stressed, it's so difficult. And I can actually see that officially all of the games have ended. The game between Ludwig and Jan did end in a draw. Here we see Jakub offered a draw, Ludwig took it, and the bishop endgame was this one where black just resigned after b5, because if you took it, then you actually can't stop this pawn from becoming a queen. And white is also threatening to take here and get a queen. So officially all of the games have ended. Let's check. Oh my goodness, I pressed the wrong one. Let's check the final results that we are seeing here. These are the updated ones. Let me just make sure once again. These are the updated ones. We see a huge congratulations to Vignir, and we can see both of them gaining half a point, so there's a chance some of the last games actually did affect the final standings here. We will never know. A huge congratulations to Icelandic Vignir Vatnar Stephenson with the win here in the 8th Uppsala Young Champions 2021. Incredible performance, scoring 7 out of 9 points. To me, that's incredibly impressive, as all of these players are really strong. If we take here a look at Vignir's route to the first place, we see that he started by beating Alexander Nor, then a draw with Jakub. He beat Jakob Kusa, he beat Milton, of course we talked about Milton before. Then he made a draw with Hilmir Jungmin, beating both Edwin and Sim on the way. And then a draw here in the last round with the top seed GM Aryan Golami. Did secure him first place in the Uppsala Young Champions 2021. So of course a giant congratulations. Also of course congratulations to the Iranian GM Aryan Golami, and a third place for Swedish FM Hampus Sørensen, or as I would say, Sørensen. That's how I would say in Danish at least. So of course also a big thank you to all of the players, a thank you to the organizers. I'm very happy that I could do commentary here of the final round. And I'm being told that we do have Vignir with us for an interview. And that's going to be great. We're going to talk to the winner. Maybe we can get him to take us through his game today with Golami, how much of it was prep and how it all worked out. So yeah, let's get him in. I hope that I made all of this work. We are getting him in just here in in 2 seconds, I think. A victory McDonald's meal? Yeah, I'm ready. Ready for Vignir to come and enlighten us with some chess. Oi, let me just see if I Oi, there we go. And Vignir, remember to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself on Zoom. Hey! Yes, perfectly. Well, you're not the one who's supposed to ask me. I'm the one who's supposed to ask you.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the win.
Yeah, thanks. It was a fun tournament.
Can you tell us a bit about your route to these 7 points?
Yeah, I mean, first game I was quite comfortable. I just won, but the second game I played against this. I think he's 12 years old or something ridiculous.
Oh wow!
And I was completely lost after in 20 moves or something. So I wasn't very hopeful for the whole tournament, but I managed to hold the draw, and then it just went off from there somehow, and started playing well.
Sounds great. Do you want to take us through your last round game here against Aryan?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, so it seemed like a lot of it was prep.
Yeah, no, but we talked after the game, and I was bluffing him. I haven't looked at this line in 6 years or something. I don't know if it's all correct, and he didn't know it either. So it was kind of a very stupid thing.
So how much of this were you bluffing, and how much of it did you know?
I knew this position. Here I knew the move was knight c2 or knight b3, and I just okay, let's blitz up knight b3.
And you kept on blitzing e4.
Yeah, just okay. E4 seems good, and here I think I knew queen e2 was the move here. I mean, it's basically the only move. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get the bishop developed, and you can't do this without protecting the pawn.
Yeah. That's the thing. It feels kind of unnatural, but of course the bishop is going to g2, so.
And then here you went for the ultra sharp f4.
Yeah. Do you know if this is all theory or is it just?
I have no clue. I wasn't checking with an engine or anything.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was wondering if there was some, if bishop takes c3.
Yeah, he should probably take this, I think, and takes knight c6 or knight d7. And knight d7, I thought it was better in the game to go knight d7 actually, just to get the c5 square. And but I mean, of course, it's just
maybe some bishop e3.
Yeah, bishop e3, bishop d2. It's probably queen c7, bishop d2.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's some position like this. I really like white here, but it's probably computer always does equal and stuff like this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a bit difficult for black to develop, but a weak pawn structure, and so computer would say balanced.
Yeah.
But he went knight c6 instead.
Yeah, I think bishop e3 was good, and bishop d2.
Yeah, I think maybe you should have gone for this, because
I think he should always take this. It's I think it's his whole point in the position to take this. Yeah,
I thought it was weird to allow rook c1 like this.
Yeah, exactly. That was my feeling during the game, that I thought, okay, I must be better after rook c1. I mean, he doesn't even have the advantage of giving me the double pawn, so I mean.
Yeah, and he has to give the bishop away anyway.
Yeah, so I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it wasn't playing too well here. Probably didn't know what it was doing, I guess.
Were you nervous at this point?
No. When you played since you were 6 years old, you don't get nervous anymore.
So you're good at controlling your nerves in general?
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't nervous at all, but I was pretty just okay, I just want to try and draw and try and get something with white maybe, but draw is very nice.
So did you calculate any tie breaks before the round?
No. I was just I was basically gambling on Hilmer, my friend. He was playing against Hampus, and I had such belief that he would at least make a draw against him, so I just decided to, okay, if I draw this, I will win on tie breaks, I think.
Okay, it was just a general feeling you had that understandable.
Yeah, because I think if Hampus had won, I think he may be on higher in tie breaks or something like this.
Yeah, I don't quite know how it works or how it worked, but you were very, very close to tie breaks.
Yeah.
But okay, now he also went for this e takes f4. Many big decisions he's making during this game. Also, I was wondering, what did you think of this e5 move? Because I thought
if you're going to play this, you should at least take on c3 first, right? I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't really like e5 in these positions, but like okay, maybe not straight away at least, but he should always take on c3. I thought e5 here was just giving me a chance to be much better.
Yeah, I think rook c1 was a great move.
Yeah,
because
like it's such a strange position as well. Like okay, he took on f4 and like I mean I thought it was just clearly better, but I didn't know what on earth this position is.
I don't think I was trying to compare this a bit to the Najdorf, but even in the Najdorf, I've never seen a pawn structure like this.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was just trying to get like some very weird game and confuse me or something. Some grandmaster thing.
Yeah. And now, of course, he can't allow the knight to go to d5, so he's once again forced to take on c3 and rook e8. What did you think in this position?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was definitely better, but it was like he still has a lot of pressure against d4, and it was quite, it's quite hard to like figure out what am I supposed to do here, because like I have like no knowledge in these types of positions.
I found what he played. I found what he played
I
quite
thought
annoying.
Just, okay, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I thought like just defending the pawn and then maybe try and swing the rook to g3. Like there was some idea of this. But of course, I wasn't really sure.
I wasn't sure queen d3 was the move.
Yeah.
Because of what he played, like this. The next 5 moves, he just made threats every single time.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite annoying to deal with.
But I don't know about other moves in this position. Maybe there is... well, of course, now I can also see the computer evaluation. So...
yeah, computer probably recommends knight d2 or what? Huh? Or...
Bishop f2, actually. Just prophylaxis.
Okay, I did not think of this. Huh?
No.
Feels like I'm allowing something, but
and then get the bishop somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
Because these maneuvers he made here, they seem very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, because I'm like, it's kind of weird what I'm doing, like placing my queen on b1 and stuff. It's feels awkward. Yeah,
but at the same time, I mean, if he's not winning the e4 pawn, you just have more space and more bishop pair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's my feeling during the game. I must be better if I just defend, because his position is so bad. Like I think positionally and just everything. So
yeah.
Just like defend this and try and get somewhere.
But it must also be a nice feeling when you're sitting during the game thinking you only need a draw, and then this is the position you have.
Yeah, exactly. So I calculated like this whole line with bishop d4, knight c6, and queen d3, and I thought I was just like, if he had gone knight b4 here, I maybe just would have actually repeated, just because I was very happy with the draw. But like on his double round days, you can blunder anything, I think. So
yeah. It's when you just need a draw, then sometimes the position doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, exactly.
So, he went for bishop d7. Did you have a tough decision to make here?
Yeah, it's like I probably knew I was probably a lot better, but I didn't know what to like, how to make progress here. It's quite hard.
How much of the next moves had you calculated when you played h3? Because it seems a lot of it's fairly forcing.
Yeah, it was very forced. I had calculated like I saw this line that I could play rook d3 and take on d6, but I wasn't going to play it because I thought it was better. But I knew I had it in the back of my mind, just to make sure I get the draw. But so I thought I had to go like h3 here.
Did you consider any other moves?
No, that's the thing. I only saw this move. Like I didn't want to play this, but I didn't see anything else. It was.
Yeah, it's because you want to play a3.
Yeah.
Just to stop the knight from going to b4. But if you play a3, then why not play h3?
Yeah, exactly. That was my feeling during the game. Also, because now yeah, I mean, of course, he doesn't want to play knight f6 either way, but because I just keep the bishop here, and yeah, he just can't do that.
Yeah, I guess knight 6 d4 is forced.
Yeah, now
Queen
I was
d4.
thinking also h6 g4 was an option.
Ah.
This was why I was like thinking during the game, but I thought like after knight e6, he's probably getting like bishop c6, knight c5, and all of a sudden there's quite a bit of pressure. So
yeah, these pawns
it
are
feels
quite
like
far
I'm, like,
advanced.
overextended a little.
Yeah,
so
that's very understandable.
Just decided to take on d4.
Knight f6 and.
But like here I just had a decision to make, because I knew like rook d3 is just very slightly better endgame for me.
He can't defend this pawn on d6.
Yeah, and you had to go bishop c6, but like probably I could have like played on, like if I was playing against 2200, I would have played like rook d3, I guess, or something, or b4 even.
Okay, and let's say after bishop c6.
Yeah, probably b4, I guess, right?
Probably. Though, I have to inform you that you actually have to you have to go and get your prize for winning the tournament very soon.
Yeah, prize ceremony.
Yeah, so let's just quickly take these last moves so that you can enjoy the draw that made you win the tournament. Rookie 1, of course, very high class, professional move. Trading the pieces and comfortable draw.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably I can like try something here, but I was just like, get out of here and win the tournament.
Yeah, of course. So huge congratulations on winning the tournament. Very nice performance.
Thank you.
And then I will let you go so that you can get your first place prize.
Yeah. All right. See you.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Now, of course, huge thank you to Vignir for showing up before the prize giving ceremony, just taking us through his thoughts about winning the tournament and through this final game. Very, very enlightening, I have to say. He's always good company. I've known him for quite a long time, actually. So, of course, huge congratulations to him and to the other I want to say medalists, finalists. Oh, I forgot to ask about McDonald's, that is true. But also a huge thank you to the organizers for organizing this incredible tournament. I can only recommend it, you know. They are so nice, and this is such a strong youth tournament. I've played it before myself. I was so happy with my experience, and thank you to the sponsors as well, as we see around here on the screen. As Scrooge is also pointing out in the chat, we have to remember to thank the organizers. And also, thank you so much to the viewers and all of you who have been participating in this commentary, coming with nice lines and keeping me company for these almost 5 hours. I've had so much fun. It's been a great pleasure with great chess, I think. And I think it's time for me to go. No more games. We need to find someone to raid. Would be a shame to not do it. I can see that King's Crusher is live. Did I say almost 5? I meant almost 4. King's Crusher is so generous when it comes to the raids for us. So let's send a raid right back to King's Crusher. And of course, I can't help it. A last thank you so much to every single one who's been a part of today and the entire tournament and everything. So have a wonderful day or have a wonderful evening. No matter where you are in the world. And I will see you some other time. Bye. And I will wave a little bit because I never know how much delay there is or anything. So I'm just gonna count down. 5, 4,